Chapter 121-140. First more. Can I ask you a question? Li Yi suddenly opened his mouth and asked. Oh, you want to ask a question before you die? Hyuga Tengying smiled, with a very disdainful smile, and said, all right, then I'll help you. If you want to ask any questions, just ask, and I'll do my best to answer you, so that you can die in peace. Li Yi also smiled and said, it's not certain who will die and who will live. Hearing this, Hyuga Fujihawk narrowed his eyes slightly. Li Yi asked, what level were you when you betrayed the village? Elite Jonin. Hyuga Fujitaka said with a proud smile. What about now, after so many years, do you think your strength has risen or fallen? Li Yi asked with a smile. Boy, I don't know why you ask such a meaningless question, but, I still have to answer you. My strength, of course, has risen. Hyuga Fujitaka laughed and said. That's not so. Li Yi shook his head. Whether it is going up or down, you can only know if you try it. Didn't you say that your strength is stronger than Sarutobi Hiruzen? Now, Sarutobi Hiruzen is behind you. You fight him, see who is stronger and who is weaker. He heard the word, behind. Hyuga Fujihawk suddenly turned his head and looked behind him. Obviously, he is still very afraid of Sarutobi Hiruzen. And Uchiha Makoto is a little overjoyed. Why did Li Yi deliberately say that? It must be that he has already exerted the power of blood following the boundary. Can escape. However, what surprised and puzzled Uchiha Makoto was that Li Yi did not use the power of the blood following the boundary. What are you doing? Uchiha Makoto asked in a low voice. However, before Uchiha Makoto finished speaking, an oval door suddenly appeared under her body. Before Uchiha Makoto could react, his body fell involuntarily. When Uchiha Makoto's body fell into the door, the oval door disappeared instantly, as if it had never existed from the beginning. At this time, Hyuga Tengying had already turned his head, and that hideous face was as dusty as a dark cloud, as if it could drip water. Because there is no one behind him at all. Boy, how dare you deceive me? However, before Hyuga Fujitaka finished shouting, the voice stopped abruptly. Immediately, he asked, where's the little girl doll? Of course he was hiding, ready to attack you. Li Yi shrugged and said with a smile. Hiding. Hyuga Fuji Eagle immediately opened the Byakugan and looked around. However, after looking around, Hyuga Fujihawk frowned. Because there is no one around. Uchiha Makoto just disappeared out of thin air. An instant, Hyuga Fujitaka's face became solemn. He knew that Uchiha Makoto never escaped, because in his enchantment, Uchiha Makoto couldn't escape at all. But now, in this world, there are only him and Li Yi. That little girl is really gone. Now, Hyuga Fujitaka has only one guess, and that is that Uchiha Makoto's concealment ability is so high that he can't even notice it. However, Hyuga Fujihawk is a man who has experienced 100 battles. The next moment, he recovered from the previous slight panic, looked at Li Yi, and said, even if she is in the dark now, I will be afraid of her, but she is just a little girl, what can she do? Today, I want to kill you, and no one can stop it. Hearing this, Li Yi stretched his back and said indifferently, I said before, today, it is uncertain who will die and who will live. Hyuga Fujihawk immediately smiled disdainfully and asked, oh, what, you still want to kill me? Hearing this, Li Yi nodded seriously. System asked him to kill Hyuga Vine Eagle, and he made it happen. Even if he can't beat him, he can escape at any time. With his current physical strength, he can summon him out in just a split second, and then he can escape instantly. Hyuga Fujihawk has great ability, what can he do? Of course, the door that he can open instantly can only let him hide in the door fruit space, and cannot let him move to other places. If he wanted to move to Konoha village, he had to prepare for at least 4 or 5 seconds. Because of Uchiha Makoto's sudden disappearance, Hyuga Fujihawk seemed to be a little afraid and felt uncomfortable all over. Therefore, He did not have the teasing and disdain before, and said, "If that's the case, let's fight it quickly. I also want to see, under the strict protection of the Land of Rain, you who can openly save people, what extraordinary ability do you have? This is for you to see." Li Yi grinned. The next moment, the whole body is like a wild horse, rushing towards Hyuga Fujihawk. Extremely fast. Oh, that's pretty good. Looking at Li Yi who was rushing over, Hyuga Tengying was a little surprised, but the next moment, he changed his words and said, "But compared to me, boy, you are still a little more tender." Speaking, Hyuga Fuji Eagle also ran towards Li Yi. The two of them are like wild horses with two crazy hares. They are not afraid of death, and they rush towards each other. In the end, the two wild horses slammed into each other. Boom. A muffled sound. Li Yi's right arm and Hyuga Fujihawk's right arm collided with each other, and a strong wind burst out. The next moment, the two bodies involuntarily retreated towards the rear. Li Yi took 7 or 8 steps back, and then he barely stabilized his body, and Hyuga Fujihawk only took 2 steps back, and then stabilized his body. One hit to see the highs and lows. In terms of speed and power, Li Yi is no match for Hyuga Fujihawk. Hyuga Fujihawk stood on the spot. He smiled. His smile was full of disdain, and said, "I said, boy, you are not my opponent." However, before Hyuga Fujihawk finished speaking, Li Yi ran towards Hyuga Fujihawk again, faster than last time. Still coming. Hyuga Fujiying was surprised for a moment, and the next moment, he grinned again and said, "If that's the case, then I'll let you know what despair is." Speaking, Hyuga Fuji Eagle also rushed out, more than twice as fast as before. He is for real. So, the two wild horses slammed into each other again without fear of death. Boom. With a muffled sound, Li Yi stepped back again, and the whole person took a full 20 to 30 steps back, and only then did he barely stabilize his body. And Hyuga Fujihawk, he flew straight out. That's right, like a kite with a broken string, it shoots straight out. But I saw a sturdy golden rod shoot out from Li Yi's right hand, the length sword, against the chest of Hyuga Vine Eagle, and flew him out. Again, the world is not in Wuhan, the world is in Shandong. Why are there comments that I died in Wuhan? Laugh cry, laugh cry. Chapter 122-ferocious. Second more. Hyuga Fujihawk didn't realize what was going on at all, just felt as if his chest was hit by a mad bison, and then the whole person just flew out. However, I saw a golden rod shoot out from Li Yi's right hand, and its length sword, directly flying the top of Hyuga's body, breaking a big tree, 2 big trees, 3 trees. Tree. In the end, after smashing 7 or 8 trees, Hyuga's body reluctantly stopped. Moreover, the reason he stopped was not because the golden stick lost its impact, but because the length of the golden stick began to shorten, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a thin needle and fell into Li Yi's palm. Li Yi knows the truth of taking advantage of someone's illness to kill them. He will never give the enemy a chance to breathe. Therefore, before putting away the golden stick, Li Yi's body rushed out like a cheetah in the direction of the Hyuga Vine Eagle, at an extremely ferocious speed. At the same time, 30 or 40 meters away, Hyuga Vine Eagle lay on the ground, vomited blood involuntarily, those eyes became silent, as if they were dying. The confident look on his face had disappeared, replaced by an unparalleled shock and incredible look. He never imagined that Li Yi would use secret tricks on him. He didn't even expect that this secret trick would directly beat him seriously. He had a very disdainful attitude towards Li Yi before, because he felt that Li Yi was just an impulsive and reckless 250 who dared to confront him. It's just killing yourself. However, it now seems that his previous idea was so wrong. Li Yi is not an impulsive 250 at all. From the beginning, he was planning to attack himself. Hyuga Fujihawk wanted to stand up from the ground to counter Li Yi. However, Li Yi's chest was sunken to the ultimate, and all the internal organs were seriously injured. Now he doesn't even dare to speak, let alone stand up. At this time, Li Yi, like a cheetah, had already rushed in front of him and kicked the head of Hyuga Vine Eagle. He's going to kick Hyuga's head off. Hyuga Fujihawk wanted to tilt his head to dodge, but now that he was seriously injured, he didn't even have the strength to move his fingers, so how could he tilt his head to dodge? Therefore, he could only helplessly, watching Li Yi's right foot, kicked his forehead. However, Li Yi's right foot hadn't touched Hyuga's forehead. Suddenly, a thick golden rod fell from the sky, like a meteorite falling, hitting Hyuga's chest with a bang. Boom! With a loud bang, the earth collapsed. Hyuga Fujihawk's body was directly smashed into Mi-chan. Li Yi immediately opened the system panel. However, what puzzled Li Yi was that on the system panel, the item to kill the enemy ninja still existed. That is to say, Hyuga Vine Eagle is not dead yet. Oh. Li Yi frowned slightly. He kicked Hyuga Fujihawk just now, just a fake action, the purpose was to attract Hyuga Fujihawk's attention. Smash Hyuga Vine Eagle into flesh-chan using the Rui Gold Hoop. Logically speaking, at the critical moment just now, Hyuga Fujihawk couldn't react at all. He just wanted to avoid his right foot, so how could he have felt the existence of the Rui Golden Hoop? However, the tasks on the system panel do exist. That said, Hyuga Vine Eagle is indeed not dead. In fact, to be honest, Li Yi is still a little shocked. After being hit by the Rui Golden Hoop, Hyuga Fuji Eagle is still alive. Logically speaking, ordinary ninjas are already dead. You know, the Rui Golden Hoop stick is 13,500 catties. In fact, what Li Yi didn't know was that under Hyuga's clothes, he was wearing a priceless chainmail suit, because this chainmail blocked most of the impact of the Rui Golden Hoop for him, so Hyuga the Eagle didn't die. Hyuga Rattan Eagle would have been dead from the moment he was successfully attacked by the Rui Golden Hoop. Li Yi immediately looked around. However, there was no one around. Li Yi frowned slightly. But the next moment, he immediately made a decision. If so, then use this method. With this thought in mind, Li Yi suddenly stretched out his right arm, and suddenly, in his right hand, a golden rod skyrocketed in length. Afterwards, Li Yi embraced the thick and long golden stick with both hands, and when he turned around, the golden stick swept away violently. That's right. With Li Yi spinning in place, the Rui Golden Hoop rod swept a circle at a lightning-fast speed. In a radius of 300 or 400 meters, all the flowers, plants and trees were flattened directly. If you look down from the sky now, you will definitely see this spectacular scene. At the same time, a muffled bang sounded. Li Yi felt the blow, and immediately turned his head to look, but saw a figure in front of the right, covered in blood, smashed by the Rui Golden Hoop, and his body flew out like a cannonball. Seeing this figure, Li Yi narrowed his eyes slightly and said in his heart, it really is invisibility. Hyuga Tengying, who was smashed by a wishful gold hoop, was definitely not himself, but was his stand-in or clone. Then, Hyuga Fujitaka used a technique similar to invisibility to hide his body and prepare to escape. However, he never imagined that Li Yi would have such a method of pervert. I would rather kill 1,000 by mistake than let go of 800. Rui's golden hoop is swept down in a circle, and there is nothing left where it passes. Li Yi put away the Rui Golden Hoop, and without any hesitation, ran directly in the direction that Hyuga Vine Eagle flew out. Because the impact force of the Rui Golden Hoop is too strong, Hyuga Fuji Eagle flew 300 or 400 meters directly, and his body barely stopped. He was lying on the ground, like a dog chewing shit, his clothes were all torn apart, and he looked extremely embarrassed. He put his hands on the ground, trying to get up and run. However, at this time, Li Yi had already run over Hyuga Fujihawk, who was lying on the ground struggling to stand up. Li Yi was a little surprised. Oh. Not dead yet. Although he was a little surprised psychologically, in action, Li Yi didn't have the slightest ink mark, just raised his right foot and stepped on Hyuga Fujihaku's body. Bang! Hyuga Ratchet held up her body of 3 or 4 centimeters. She was stepped on the ground again, her body twitched slightly, and her mouth was still eating dirt. This kind of embarrassing appearance was not even as good as a dog. Right foot stepped on the back of Hyuga Ivy Eagle, who barely struggled. To be precise, he wanted to struggle, but he didn't have the strength to struggle. Seeing this, Lee Yi knew that although Hyuga Fuji Eagle is not dead yet, he will definitely live soon. Before the next update 2100. Before the next update 2100. Before the next update 2100. Chapter 123_beat. First more. Lee Yi kicked Hyuga Fujihaku. A muffled bang. Hyuga Fujihaku's body rolled directly on the ground 3 or 4 times before finally lying face up on the ground. His face has become gray, and he is breathing more and less. Obviously he can't last for a long time. Seeing that this person was no longer intimidating, Lee Yi asked, "Has the Land of Rain discovered Anning Village?" Since the Kingdom of Rain can find him, it means that they may have found the head of Anning Village. Lee Yi was quite dark in his heart. He didn't want to see hundreds of people in Anning Village die innocently because of him. However, if the Land of Rain has already found the head of Anning Village, then, with Hanzo of the Salamander's cautious temperament, he will definitely kill hundreds of people from Anning Village up and down. Lee Yi didn't want to see this scene. Therefore, he did not directly kill Hyuga Fuji Eagle, but quietly waited for his answer. However, what Lee Yi waited for was the hideous laughter of Hyuga Fujitaka. Hee hee, hee hee hee, hee hee hee. Perhaps because of the pain in his body, Hyuga Fujihaku's laughter was intermittent, and he kept gasping for breath, so his laughter sounded weird. Lee Yi frowned slightly and asked, "Your life is now in my hands. I'll ask you again, has the Land of Rain found Anning Village?" However, just like before, Hyuga Fujitaka still didn't answer Lee Yi's question, just laughed. Lee Yi's eyes, a flash of anger flashed. Without the slightest hesitation, he kicked Hyuga Vine Eagle on the head. However, the expected sound of broken bones did not sound. Contrary, there was a crisp sound of bang, accompanied by white mist, rising from the soles of Lee Yi's feet. This time, Lee Yi was really surprised. A clone again. That's right, this time, the one who was kicked to death by Lee Yi was still just a clone of Hyuga Fujihaku. Damn, as expected of the elite Jonin from more than 10 years ago, it is really difficult to deal with. Lee Yi secretly cursed in his heart. Hyuga Fujihaku is now seriously injured and dying. If this situation falls on ordinary people, then the other party has already given up resistance and died obediently. However, Hyuga Fujitaka used the clone technique again and managed to escape. You can see his fighting spirit. You can also see his desire to survive. Compete with Sarutobi Hiruzen for the position of Hokage. However, even so, Lee Yi did not panic in the slightest. Instead, a slight arc appeared on the corner of his mouth, as if he was a little disdainful and a little arrogant, and said with a smile, "Everything I have touched cannot escape my palm. So, Hyuga Vine Eagle, you can't escape." Finished speaking, Lee Yi slowly closed his eyes, as if he was sensing something. And the next moment, Lee Yi suddenly opened his eyes, turned around, and slammed his fist towards the rear. Lee Yi's punch came out of nowhere, and then, he felt his fist hit a body. The next moment, under his fist, Hyuga's body was exposed. He looked at Lee Yi with an incredible face, and his eyes were shaking because of the shock. And Lee Yi's fist, at this time, landed on Hyuga's forehead, smashing his forehead into it. How can? Hyuga Fujihaku wanted to speak. However, before he finished speaking, his body was stiffened involuntarily, and he fell backwards. A muffled bang, Hyuga Vine Eagle fell to the ground, stirring up a layer of dust. His eyes rolled, apparently unconscious and unconscious. Seeing this scene, Lee Yi breathed a sigh of relief. What he just used was the ability of the door fruit. You must know that the ability of the door fruit is to open a door on top of all objects that have been touched. He thought that Hyuga Fujihawk was seriously injured and would definitely escape, so he boldly closed his eyes and used the ability of the door fruit to sense the position of Hyuga Fujihawk. But I didn't expect that Hyuga Fujihawk would do the opposite. Not only did he not escape, but he came behind him and was about to attack him. If it wasn't for his quick sensing, he would have been killed by Hyuga Vine Eagle by now. Hyuga Fujihawk lying on the ground dying and unconscious, Lee Yi sighed again in his heart. As expected of the person who was able to compete with Sarutobi Hiruzen back then, he is indeed not a coward. Although Lee Yi had a little admiration for Hyuga Fujihawk in his heart, in action, Lee Yi still did not hesitate to kill Hyuga Fujihawk. After all, this guy is not a good stubble. If you don't kill it now, you will be raising tigers, and you will have endless troubles in the future. However, just as Lee Yi raised his right foot, Uchiha Makoto's voice suddenly sounded from behind Lee Yi. Lee Yi, let's take him back and let him listen to Lord Hokage. Hearing Uchiha Makoto's crisp voice, Lee Yi blinked and turned to look. I was indeed Uchiha Makoto's beautiful face. Immediately, Lee Yi frowned. He had obviously put Uchiha Makoto into the space of the door fruit. Logically speaking, if he didn't open the door, Uchiha Makoto would not be able to come out. But, now, Uchiha Makoto is indeed out. Could it be that the space for the fruit of the door has a time limit, so you can't stay in it for too long? Lee Yi couldn't help but wonder. However, Lee Yi also knows that now is not the time to doubt. After all, the trouble of Hyuga Fujihawk has not been completely resolved. Therefore, Lee Yi asked, are you sure it's the safest way not to kill him? Uchiha Makoto walked up to Lee Yi with a warm voice and said, Lee Yi, I know what you are worried about. Indeed, killing him is the safest way, but if you can bring Hyuga Fujihawk back alive, then, you will get unexpected benefits. Quote. An unexpected benefit. Lee Yi narrowed his eyes. The world is bustling for profit, and the world is bustling for profit. Lee Yi's favorite thing to do is to weigh the pros and cons. So, after thinking for a while, Lee Yi asked, as long as it's a living person, right? Uchiha Makoto didn't understand why Lee Yi asked this question. He nodded and said softly, that's right. Hearing Uchiha Makoto's affirmation, Lee Yi grinned, and Senbai's Kiba teeth reflected the cold light, making people feel chills. Then, Lee Yi directly turned around, raised his right foot, and stomped Hyuga Fujihawk's hands and feet into pieces. Chapter 124-2 Scrolls Part 2. Lee Yi showed no mercy, and directly smashed Hyuga's hands and feet into pieces. Uchiha Makoto frowned. Although she has experienced hundreds of battles, she is a girl after all. Now, seeing such a bloody and disgusting scene, of course she will feel uncomfortable. However, the next moment, she accepted this bloody and disgusting scene. Because she has seen scenes that are even bloodier and disgusting than this. The scene in front of her would not cause any psychological shadow to her at all. However, having said that, Uchiha Makoto still asked, actually, there is no need for you to do this. He has no resistance now, we just need to bring him to the village and let Lord Hokage let him go. I trust Lord Hokage to make the right decision. Obviously, Uchiha Makoto does not agree with Lee Yi's approach. However, after Lee Yi heard the words, he smiled and said, I didn't kill him, in fact, I was very kind. If Lee Yi's strength has not improved, then Lee Yi is now dead without a place to be buried. And, more importantly, the system task, kill the Hyuga Vine Eagle. For a chance to evolve, Lee Yi must also kill Hyuga Fujihawk. However, if the living person of Hyuga Fujihawk can be brought back to Konoha village, then Lee Yi will also gain unexpected benefits. Whether it's an evolutionary opportunity or an unexpected benefit, Lee Yi wants it all. Therefore, Lee Yi did not kill Hyuga Vine Eagle just now. He wanted to wait until he brought Hyuga Fujihawk back to the village before finding a chance to kill him. All in all, Hyuga Vine Eagle must die. Whether it's for system mission reasons or Li Yi's personal reasons. Hyuga Cane Eagle will not die for a day, and Li Yi will have a rare peace of mind for a day. Only when he is dead can Li Yi feel at ease. Uchiha Makoto suggested. Although he is in a coma now, the barrier he set up should still be there. You should use the power of your blood to follow the barrier and take us back. Li Yi nodded in agreement. There is an enchantment, so just by running, you can't leave this place. Therefore only space transfers can be used. However, Li Yi did not use his strength immediately, but squatted down and groped on Hyuga Fujihawk's body. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly and asked, "What are you doing?" Uchiha Makoto's eyes. This scene of one big gentleman groping the body of another big gentleman is a bit disgusting. Li Yi said, "I'll see if he has something good now." "You are so greedy," Uchiha Makoto commented. "That's human nature." Li Yi shrugged indifferently. The task given to him by the system is not only to let him kill Hyuga Vine Eagle, but also to let him obtain a secret scroll from Hyuga Vine Eagle. This secret scroll should be on him. However, after groping for a while, Li Yi did not find any scrolls, but only a jade pendant. This made Li Yi frown. Impossible. Hyuga Fujihawk to have no scrolls on his body. Did he hide the scroll somewhere else? Where is that? Li Yi frowned in thought. Looking at Li Yi's pensive expression, Uchiha Makoto asked, "What's wrong?" Li Yi said, "He must have treasures, but these treasures are not on him. Where do you think they will be?" Hearing this question, Uchiha Makoto thought for a moment, and then replied, "It should be in that jade pendant. That jade pendant, ******, is his psychic space." Hearing this, Li Yi's eyes lit up and he suddenly realized. In the original Hokage, Tenten likes to keep his weapons in a scroll. And that scroll is her psychic space. As we all know, Tenten is a local tyrant, and there are countless treasures in the psychic space. Now, the secret scroll that Li Yi is looking for must be in the psychic space of Hyuga Fujihawk. And his psychic space should be that jade pendant. Therefore, without any hesitation, Li Yi turned to look at Uchiha Makoto and said, "Can you take out his psychic space treasure?" Uchiha Makoto frowned and asked, "Are you so sure that he has a baby?" This kind of person must have treasures. Even if they don't carry them all with them, they definitely carry a part of them with them. Since this part is not on him, it must be in his psychic space. Li Yi explained. It makes some sense. Uchiha Makoto head taps. Then do it. Li Yi stretched and stood up. Uchiha Makoto nodded lightly. She walked in front of Hyuga Fujihawk, took off the jade pendant hanging around Hyuga Fujihawk's neck, and put it on the ground. Afterwards, Uchiha Makoto squatted down and dipped the index and middle fingers of his left hand in the blood of Hyuga Fujihawk. Immediately afterwards, Uchiha Makoto used blood to draw a horizontal bar in the palm of his right hand. In the end, she hand-sealed with both hands, and the hand-seal speed was very fast, making Li Yi dazzled. Soon, she finished the seal, raised her right hand high, and slammed it on the jade pendant. Bang! With the sound of Uchiha Makoto's voice, a thick white mist rose from her right hand. Spirituality only recognizes blood. Although Uchiha Makoto used his own chakra, he used the blood of Hyuga Fujihawk, so the things in Hyuga Fujihawk's psychic space were summoned. The white fog gradually dissipated, 2 yuhi-colored scrolls appeared in Li Yi's field of vision. The secret scroll requested in the mission should be among these 2 scrolls. Li resolutely said. Uchiha Makoto glanced at the 2 scrolls, then looked up at Li Yi, half smiled, and said, "The scrolls are not a good thing." Li Yi smiled. "Whether it's a good thing or not, put it away first." After speaking, Li Yi squatted down and put away the 2 dark yuhi scrolls on the ground. Because the 2 deep yuhi-colored scrolls are not too thick, it is not a problem for Lee Yi to hold one in each hand. Uchiha Makoto was a little curious about what was written on the two scrolls. He didn't ask much, after all, it was Lee Yi's trophy. In fact, Uchiha Makoto is still a little surprised that Lee Yi actually defeated Hyuga Fujitaka Jonin in just 4 or 5 minutes. Incredible. You must know that even her Uchiha Makoto may not be able to escape if she faces Hyuga Fujihaka. That's right, you can't even escape. Before the next change 2200. Before the next change 2200. Before the next change 2200. Chapter 125-Law. So, Uchiha Makoto was very curious. What method did Lee Yi use to beat Hyuga Fujihaka into a coma in just 4 or 5 minutes? You must know that a decade or two ago, Hyuga Fujihaka was already an elite Jonin. Over the years, he has been living under the pursuit of Konoha village, and his strength is definitely stronger than before. Maybe the current Hyuga Fujihaka already has the strength of a cage-level powerhouse. Even the 3 generations of Hokage-sama may not be able to deal with the current Hyuga Fujihaka. However, is such a powerful Hyuga Fujihaka, but defeated by Lee Yi. This surprised Uchiha Makoto. In fact, Uchiha Makoto only knew that Lee Yi had the ability to transfer space, but he didn't know that Lee Yi also possessed such an artifact as the Rui Golden Hoop. In fact, Lee Yi's current combat effectiveness is in a state of being strong or weak. So-called strong is because as long as Lee Yi can use the Rui Golden Hoop to make a successful sneak attack, the opponent will surely die, and there is no possibility of surviving. For example, Hyuga Fujihaka, he is so powerful, isn't he still planted in Lee Yi's hands? So-called weak is because if Lee Yi did not succeed in the sneak attack, then, once the opponent reacts, Lee Yi will fall into a very passive situation. If Hyuga Fuji Eagle had noticed from the beginning that Lee Yi was deliberately inducing him, then he would never have been hit by the Rui Golden Hoop. As long as Hyuga Teng Ying keeps using the avatar technique, or has the technique of shadow clone, Lee Yi can be consumed to death sooner or later. In fact, how could Lee Yi not know that this is his greatest weakness? But even so, he couldn't help it. In his body, there is almost no chakra, and he cannot use ninjutsu at all. His physique, before he got the system, was just a sick seedling, and he didn't even have the strength to chop wood. Although the system has been obtained and the physique has been improved, it is possible to train the body, but the training of the body is a very long and difficult process, and it cannot be accomplished overnight. Unless Lee Yi can get some kind of powerful body training method, such as the 8 inner gates. This world, only, the 8 inner gates, can penetrate Lee Yi's eyes. Lee Yi is very self-aware, so from the very beginning, he is very clear about his current situation, that is, if you want to become stronger, you can only do body training, but if you want to do body training, a powerful body training method must indispensable. Lee Yi has to work so hard now is because he wants to exercise his physique first, lay a solid foundation, and then he can accumulate a lot in the future. There is nothing in this world that can be achieved overnight. What is achieved overnight cannot last forever. Lee Yi is well aware of this truth, therefore, he will choose this difficult path of body training now. Rainbow can only be seen after the wind and rain. Lee Yi has self-confidence. As long as he can persevere, he will definitely become stronger in the future. Lee Yi thought of these things from the day he got the system. Now, instead of thinking about these things, he spent 20 or 30 seconds opening an oval door in front of him. The oval door appeared out of thin air, revealing the black and green space inside. Apparently, this is the door to the village of Konoha. There was a thin layer of sweat on Lee Yi's forehead. They were still 500 or 600 meters away from Konoha village. This distance was not too short for the current Lee Yi. Looking at the oval door in front of Lee Yi, Uchiha Makoto narrowed his beautiful eyes slightly, and calculated a little in his heart. It would take 28 seconds to condense a door that could lead to 600 meters away, but with his current physical strength, it has already consumed a lot. If he is in his prime now, then this time will probably be shortened by half. Just when Uchiha Makoto was thinking, Lee Yi's faint voice suddenly entered her ears. Let's go. Uchiha Makoto came back to his senses, but saw that Lee Yi walked into the oval door without turning his head, carrying the Hyuga Vine Eagle with both hands and feet on his back. Uchiha Makoto also had no ink marks and immediately followed. After entering the elliptical door space, there is another elliptical door that appears in front of you. The two walked out of the second oval door again. When Uchiha Makoto saw his surroundings clearly, he was taken aback. Because, this is not the gate of Konoha village, but Lee Yi's home. That's right, Lee Yi directly teleported himself to his own home. Uchiha Makoto's beautiful eyes widened slightly, and she said in surprise, it's not 600 meters, but 1,200 meters. From the previous place, to Lee Yi's home, the distance is 1,200 meters. Therefore, Uchiha Makoto immediately changed the evaluation data of Lee Yi in his mind. In the heyday, the distance of 1,200 to 300 meters would only take 15 to 16 seconds. If this was placed 3 days ago, it would have been impossible. Lee Yi, who was wiping the sweat on his forehead, Uchiha Makoto discovered a law. The higher Lee Yi's physical strength, the shorter the time to condense the door. Uchiha Makoto previously believed that Lee Yi's ability to transfer space is to extract physical strength at one time, so as long as the physical strength reaches the standard, the time to gather the door will only take a moment. But now it seems that her guess is obviously wrong. For example, Lee Yi's overall strength value is 10, and it takes 5 points of stamina to cross the distance of 1,230 meters just now, so it will take 15 or 6 seconds. And because Lee Yi fought with Hyuga Fujihawk before, he consumed most of his stamina, and his overall stamina was only 7, so he condensed the door and consumed a total of 278 seconds. If Lee Yi's overall strength is 20, 50 or even 100, then it will only take a moment to condense the door spanning a distance of 1,002 to 300 meters. Of course, this was just an analogy. Uchiha Makoto didn't know what Lee Yi's overall strength was, nor how much stamina it took to gather a door that spanned a distance of 1,200 to 300 meters. His current physical strength is only equivalent to that of Genin. If his physical strength reaches the level of Jonin, or even an elite Jonin, then how strong does it have to be when combined with his ability? On Uchiha Makoto's beautiful smiling face, there was a hint of shock and anticipation. At this moment, Lee Yi's faint voice suddenly rang in Uchiha Makoto's ear. Who are we going to find, Hokage? I saw that Lee Yi had come to Uchiha Makoto's side without knowing when, gently squeezed a fluff from Uchiha Makoto's clothes, and said. Lee Yi approached suddenly, which startled Uchiha Makoto a little. Looking at Lee Yi's handsome and angular face, Uchiha Makoto swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and then his cheeks became slightly hot. I've been very busy recently, and I work overtime until more than 9 o'clock in the evening every day. Chapter 126. Sarutobi Hiruzen doesn't want to kill him. Uchiha Makoto went to Sarutobi Hiruzen. Lee Yi stayed at home and waited. Lee Yi went straight home was because, if he carried Hyuga Rattan Eagle on his back and walked down the street in broad daylight, it would cause a lot of unnecessary trouble. In order to avoid these unnecessary troubles, Lee Yi directly transferred the space back to his home. And now, for the same reason, he did not go to Hokage-sama with Hyuga Fujitaka behind his back, but let Sarutobi Hiruzen come to him. After all, Hyuga Fujihawk is no small person. Hyuga Fujihawk lying motionless on the ground, Lee Yi narrowed his eyes. To be honest, he now wants to kill Hyuga Vine Eagle with a stick to get a chance to evolve, or even a better baby. The system once told him that the reward he got for completing the task was not only one chance to evolve, but maybe multiple chances to evolve, and even more treasures. In the previous missions, every time Lee Yi completed a mission, he only got one chance to evolve. This time, Lee Yi wants to see if he can get multiple evolution opportunities at one time, or can he get other treasures. Lee Yi's current mentality is equivalent to a gambler's mentality. Although it didn't work a few times before, but the next time, maybe it will work. However, Lee Yi still wanted to know what the unexpected benefits that Uchiha Makoto spoke of were. So, Lee Yi sat on the sofa, waiting for Sarutobi Hiruzen to arrive. He still has that stamina. In the process of waiting, Lee Yi did not slack at all. Because Hyuga Fujitaka might wake up. Although Lee Yi has now abolished Hyuga's hands and feet, preventing his hand seal from releasing ninjutsu, Lee Yi did not take it lightly. Only after completely killing Hyuga Fujihawk will Lee Yi really feel relieved. Now, Hyuga Fuji Eagle is not dead, so Lee Yi will always be on guard against him. Does the ghost know if he has any other means? Just under Lee Yi's tight guard, Uchiha Makoto came back. However, there is no one behind Uchiha Makoto. Lee Yi asked, "Where's Lord Hokage?" Uchiha Makoto replied, "Hokage-sama will be here soon." Lee Yi nodded. In the original, Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen's style is completely different from Uzumaki's style. Uzumaki Naruto appeared in front of the public as much as possible, and even spent a lot of chakra to divide hundreds of clones to help ordinary people in Konoha village. However, Sarutobi Hiruzen is different. Unless it is a public event, Sarutobi Hiruzen hardly appears in public, and the monitoring power of the village is not as high as that of Uzumaki Naruto. Last time, when Lee Yi and Uchiha Fugaku fought, Sarutobi Hiruzen just came back from the Land of Wind and saw the two fighting, so he came to help. Sarutobi Hiruzen, who has been busy all the time, appears so timely. The same is true now. Sarutobi Hiruzen didn't want to appear in public, so instead of coming with Uchiha Makoto, he came in secret. However, just as Lee Yi just stood up from the sofa, swish! A figure appeared in front of Lee Yi out of thin air like a teleportation. To be precise, it appeared in front of Hyuga Fujitaka. Man was wearing a white Hokage robe, lined with a Yuhi-colored ninja suit, a Hokage hat, a mustache on his chin, wrinkles on his face, and a pipe in his mouth. At this moment, he lowered his head, smoked a cigarette, and looked at Hyuga Fujihawk on the ground. To be precise, he looked at Hyuga Fujihawk's hands and feet that had become smashed, and his brows were slightly wrinkled. He took a hard puff on his cigarette and asked, "Makoto, do you know medical ninjutsu?" Uchiha Makoto shook his head gently. "Lord Hokage, I don't know how to heal ninjutsu." "Oh, it looks like I'll have to do it myself." Sarutobi Hiruzen took another puff of cigarette, and in the mist, he rolled up his sleeves, squatted down at the same time, took a deep breath, and placed his palms on Hyuga's chest. Seeing this scene, Lee Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, and he thought to himself, it seems that this old guy doesn't want to kill Hyuga Fujihawk. At the same time, under Sarutobi Hiruzen's hands, a soft pale green light emanated, and an invisible force poured into Hyuga Fujihawk's body along his hands. Hyuga Fujihawk's body began to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye, but this was just an ordinary minor injury. For serious injuries, such as Hyuga Fujitaka's missing hands and feet, Sarutobi Hiruzen was powerless. Uchiha Makoto walked to Lee Yi's side and whispered, "Master Hokage is known as a ninjutsu professor, Grand Master, S5 chakra changes, not to mention medical ninjutsu in the entire ninja world, most of him, he will." Hearing Uchiha Makoto's words, Lee Yi just wanted to say, "I know better than you about this matter." However, on the surface, Lee Yi hummed and nodded. After a while, under Sarutobi Hiruzen's treatment, Hyuga Fujihawk's minor injuries have basically recovered, and internal injuries and serious injuries have also been treated. He won't die, at least for a short time. Sarutobi Hiruzen's palm disappeared, he slowly exhaled a turbid breath, stood up, turned his head to look at Lee Yi, and asked, "Lee Yi, let him sit on your sofa for a while, do you mind?" Lee Yi wanted to say, "Of course I do. Why don't you mind?" However, in front of Lord Hokage, some superficial work still needs to be done, so Lee directly shook his head. I don't mind. Hee, Ruzi can be taught. Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled and stroked his beard, then helped Hyuga Fujihawk up from the ground by himself. Seeing this scene, Uchiha Makoto immediately stepped forward and supported Hyuga Fujihawk for Sarutobi Hiruzen. At the same time, Uchiha Makoto kept winking at Lee, wanting Lee to come over to help him and perform in front of Lord Hokage. However, Lee stood still. I let this guy covered in ashes and blood sit on my sofa. This is already a great favor. You still want me to help him on my sofa myself? Tell you, impossible. Absolutely impossible. Therefore, Lee deliberately pretended not to see it and stood there without moving. Stomps the ground hard as he walks. Hyuga Fujihawk was not far from the sofa, so after walking for a while, he was helped to the sofa. Sarutobi Hiruzen raised the index finger and middle finger of his right hand together, and the tip of both fingers flashed a faint green light, and then he aimed at Hyuga Fujihawk's temple and lightly tapped. Immediately, Hyuga Fujihawk woke up. Chapter 127-Suicide. Hyuga Fujihawk opened his eyes suddenly, with a cautious look on his face, while looking around, trying to find the enemy and a safe place. Seeing this scene, Lee sighed. This is the fighting consciousness of the strong. Ordinary people must be confused when they wake up. By the way, they rub their eyes and faces again to recover. But Hyuga Fuji Eagle just woke up. The first thing is to observe whether there are enemies around, and find a place to hide. This is completely different from ordinary people. However, the next moment, the pain of the broken hands and feet, like a wave, frantically poured into the brain nerves of Hyuga Fujihawk. An instant, Hyuga Fujitaka burst into tears. That's right, he burst into tears. Although he is a tough man, in the final analysis, he is only flesh and blood. At this time, his hands and feet have been chopped into pieces. How can he not feel pain? However, he is also a real man. Although he burst into tears, he did not yell, but kept breathing in cold air to relieve the pain. At the same time, he saw Sarutobi Hiruzen standing in front of him. Immediately, his pupils shrank, his face changed, and he asked, Hiruzen. Sarutobi Hiruzen stood in front of Hyuga Fujihawk and took a deep breath. Amidst the clouds, he said lightly, Fujihawk, we haven't seen each other for more than 10 years, haven't we? Hyuga Fujitaka finally understands his current situation. On the left stood the little girl from the Uchiha clan. Front stands Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Hokage of Konoha village. On the right stood the boy who beat him badly. These three people surrounded him. Even if his hands and feet are still healthy, he may not be able to run. Not to mention that his hands and feet are gone, he can't form seals, he can't perform ninjutsu, his combat power has been greatly reduced, and he can't escape. In other words, now he is just a trapped beast in a cage, unable to make any big waves. After understanding his situation, Hyuga Fujitaka smiled suddenly, but his smile was always miserable. He looked up at Sarutobi Hiruzen in front of him, and said, Hiruzen, you are really a noble person and forget things. It's been 18 years, and I haven't seen each other for 18 years. 18 years. Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded and said, smoking a cigarette, this time is indeed not short, but I didn't expect that you would become a person from the land of rain. If I didn't rely on other countries, how could I have lived until now? Hyuga Fujitaka sneered, stared into Sarutobi Hiruzen's eyes, and grinned. Hiruzen, don't pretend. If it wasn't for you who ordered me to be hunted down, how could I be like this, and how could I be someone else? Ninjas of the country, all of this is your fault. And, Hyuga Fujitaka's tone became hysterical. He even tried to stand up and ram Sarutobi Hiruzen with his body. Seeing this scene, Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed lightly, holding a pipe in his hand, and tapped Hyuga Fujihawk on the head. Bang! A crisp sound. Hyuga Fujihawk's body that had just sat up from the sofa was knocked back abruptly and sat down on the sofa again. He was dizzy, his eyes flashed with gold stars, and his consciousness was a little unclear. "Oh, Ivy Eagle, calm down." Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed lightly and said, "It's been so many years, I can't remember the grudges that year, but I know that the person who was most suitable for Hokage was not me." "Of course it's not you. You have to be incompetent, you have to have no connections. If you are not Senju Tobarama's apprentice, how can you become Hokage?" Hyuga Vine Eagle lowered his voice and roared. His voice was very hoarse, like the roar of a beast. Sarutobi Hiruzen didn't refute Hyuga Fujitaka's words, but said, "Fujitaka, I didn't intend to kill you." Hearing this, Li Yi, who was beside him, frowned. 3 generations of Hokage didn't plan to kill him. What is this operation? Konoha village that if you encounter any missing nin, kill them if you can. And Hyuga Fujihawk is one of the biggest missing nin in Konoha village. Sarutobi Hiruzen be so kind to him. Could it be that this is the reunion of old friends, because things are different, so Sarutobi Hiruzen has a heart of compassion. If the 3 generations of Hokage don't kill him, then this matter will be a little troublesome. Li Yi frowned slightly. When Hyuga Fujitaka heard Sarutobi Hiruzen's words, he smiled disdainfully and said, "Hiruzen, I don't need your sympathy. Even if you don't kill me, I will kill myself. I'm already your prisoner. I want to kill or cut me off. As you please." After saying that, Hyuga Fujihawk turned his head abruptly, with a tugging look. Li Yi's eyes lit up. And Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed lightly and persuaded, "You are so old, why can't you let go of the grievances of the year? After all, you are from Konoha village. Let go of the grievances of the past. Hee, this is a light statement." Hyuga Fujihawk grinned. "You haven't experienced what I've experienced. What qualifications do you have to persuade me to correct my evil? You haven't experienced darkness, so how could you know how terrible the darkness is? Hiruzen, stop joking. What do you know? What do you do? I don't understand. You are just the lucky one chosen by God. You will only stand in the light and look down on us ants standing in the dark." As he spoke, Hyuga Fujitaka's tone became hysterical again. Hearing this, Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly, and seemed to feel that Hyuga Fujihawk's psychology was a little perverted. However, after Li Yi heard this, he nodded slightly in agreement. People who have not experienced darkness are not qualified to comment on darkness. Because they don't understand. Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed lightly, took a puff of cigarette, and said, "Fuji Ying, there is a good saying, when will the grievances be repaid? The things of the past have already passed, so why bother? Change the evil and return to the right, stay. I will seek a good position for you, although your hands and feet are gone, but your brain is still there, you need to use your experience to cultivate new leaves." Quote. When speaking, Sarutobi Hiruzen knocked on his head, a look of bitterness. Huh. Hyuga Fujihawk suddenly laughed, with a very disdainful and miserable smile, shook his head and said, "Hiruzen, you don't understand anything. You will only stand on a high place and put on an aloof look, to persuade those of us who live in the gutter, you're a fake coon." Looking at the hysterical Hyuga Vine Eagle, Sarutobi Hiruzen did not speak. And Li Yi was a little anxious. Why didn't this person commit suicide? Suicide now. Chapter 128 How can I kill him? First more. Hyuga Fujitaka said he was going to kill himself. But until now, he has not committed suicide. This made Li Yi very speechless. Can't you just talk and count? Since you want to say suicide, then you should kill yourself. I'm still waiting for my reward. Isn't it bad to be a man who keeps his word? Isn't it fragrant? However, until now, Hyuga Fujihawk has not committed suicide. This way, Li Yi despised Hyuga Fujihawk very much in his heart. If you don't commit suicide, why would you say so? What are you pretending to be? At this moment, Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed again and asked, "Fujihawk, you really don't plan to change your ways?" Hee, what is right and what is evil? Do you think you are the righteous party now, and you think I am the absolute evil party? Hyuga Tengying sneered and asked, there is no absolute righteousness and evil in this world. Do you think you are Hokage and you are righteous? Haha, it is a big mistake. Sarutobi Hiruzen didn't want to talk to Hyuga Fujihawk, so he said, Fujihawk, since that's the case, then I have to send you back to Hyuga's house. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Send me back. Hee, Hiruzen, you are such a poisonous heart. Send me back and make me humiliated. Send me back and make me the laughingstock of everyone's ridicule. Hyuga Fujitaka laughed even more miserably and sadly, and said, Hiruzen, I advise you to kill me now, otherwise, I will definitely escape, and then I will do whatever it takes to get revenge on you. Hearing this, Sarutobi Hiruzen sighed. I don't understand. Sarutobi Hiruzen shook his head, smoked a cigarette, and sighed. Hyuga's mouth, there is a cool arc, and the whole person gives a very dragging feeling. Looking at Hyuga Fujihawk, Lee secretly thought, it seems that this guy said suicide before, but he was really just pretending. This guy didn't plan to commit suicide from the beginning. At the same time, he began to think of ways to kill Hyuga Fujihawk. Sarutobi Hiruzen is merciful and does not want to kill Hyuga Fujihawk, an old friend, so he will definitely send someone to protect Hyuga Fujihawk and send him back to the Hyuga family. However, in this case, Lee could not complete the task of the system. So, Lee is thinking of a way. How can he kill Hyuga Fujihawk under Sarutobi Hiruzen's eyes? At this time, Sarutobi Hiruzen said again, Fujihawk, you wait here, I will go to the Hyuga family, and they should send someone to take you back soon. Speaking, Sarutobi Hiruzen was first a hand seal. After printing, he gently placed his right hand with a pale green light on Hyuga's head. Then, the light green light was like flowing water, and he touched Sarutobi Hiruzen's right hand. Bit by bit poured into Hyuga Fujihawk's body. When the light disappeared completely, Sarutobi Hiruzen also slowly raised his right hand. What have you done to me? Hyuga Fujitaka felt that something was wrong with his body and asked. Sarutobi Hiruzen didn't answer him, but looked at Uchiha Makoto and Lee, and said, I put a seal on him, and now he won't die easily, and he doesn't have any attack power, so let him stay here for the time being, I'm going out. Hearing this, Lee's eyes narrowed slightly, and he thought to himself, not only did he seal his life, not let his life force flow away, but also sealed his strength. What Uchiha Makoto paid attention to was the second half of Sarutobi Hiruzen's words. She was slightly surprised and asked, Master Hokage, do you want to go to the Hyuga family in person? Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded and explained, this matter is no trivial matter. Hyuga Fujitaka was originally the next head of the Hyuga family, and he has a high prestige in the Hyuga family. If it wasn't for fighting for the throne with me, then he would not have been reduced to the current state. Alas, now that he's back, it's a big deal, and I need to go and inform myself. So it is. Uchiha Makoto head taps. You know, there are many ninjas under Hokage, who are guarding the safety of Hokage-sama all the time. For example, Sarutobi Hiruzen came alone on the surface, but in fact, there must be many powerful ninjas around Lee's house. Sarutobi Hiruzen only needs a gesture, or a command, and these ninjas will instantly kneel in front of him, waiting for his instructions. Originally, to inform the Hyuga family, Sarutobi Hiruzen only had to let these ninjas go. However, Hyuga Fujihawk is no small thing. Therefore, Sarutobi Hiruzen will personally go out. Vine Eagle, we'll see you later. Sarutobi Hiruzen looked back at Hyuga Fujitaka and said. Hiruzen, don't be so fake, I don't want to see you at all. Hyuga Fujitaka sneered weakly. He wanted to get up and run away. But now his hands and feet are completely broken, and there is not a trace of strength in his body, not even the strength to speak, let alone escape. Sarutobi Hiruzen knew that it was not something that could be accomplished in a day to make Hyuga Fujihawk return to justice. After all, Hyuga Fujihawk had a lot of resentment towards him. To resolve this kind of hatred and resentment, it would take a long time to flesh out. Therefore, he didn't say much, just sighed and walked away. When he walked out of the room, Hyuga Fujitaka sneered directly and said, Sarutobi Hiruzen is a good person and doesn't like killing people, but this will be his biggest weakness. Uchiha Makoto immediately retorted, Lord Hokage is merciful, he can't bear to kill you, and wants to give you a chance to reform himself, don't be ignorant. Hee. Hyuga Fujitaka just smiled. Smile very disdainful. Uchiha Makoto frowned. Reason, at this moment, she always felt that Lord Hokage seemed to have made a wrong decision. He shouldn't have let Hyuga Fujihawk go. However, Lord Hokage is the lord of a country after all, as the so-called Kun has no jokes, since he has made this decision, no matter right or wrong, he has to carry it out. At this moment, Hyuga Fuji Eagle turned to look at Lee Yi and said, Boy, you are very strong. Lee Yi didn't answer, and didn't seem to hear it. Hyuga Fujihawk continued, Can you tell me, what kind of weapon is that stick of yours? Stick. Uchiha Makoto frowned immediately. She didn't know that Lee Yi also had a stick weapon. She previously thought that Lee Yi's defeat of Hyuga Fujitaka depended on his powerful space to transfer the boundaries of blood. But now it seems that the fact does not seem to be the case. However, under the gazes of Uchiha Makoto and Hyuga Fujitaka, Lee Yi replied indifferently, No comment. No comment. Hee, have a backbone. But, boy, remember, there is almost nothing that I can't do. Since I'm interested in your stick, then, sooner or later, that stick will be in my pocket. Hyuga Fujitaka said with a grim smile. Before the next change 2200. Before the next change 2200. Before the next change 2200. Chapter 129-idea Part 2. No matter how Hyuga Fujihawk provokes Lee Yi remains expressionless. He didn't seem to take his words to heart at all. Uchiha Makoto frowned. She knew that Lee Yi was a very vengeful person. Hyuga Fujihawk is now provoking him like this. Logically speaking, he should not endure it like this. However, the fact is that Lee Yi is really enduring it all the time. This made Uchiha Makoto very confused. However, while wondering, Uchiha Makoto was a little curious. Lee Yi have other plans. He's not the type to endure bullying. Everyone else came to pee on his head, how could he bear it? I have to say that Uchiha Makoto has gotten to know Lee Yi very well after getting along for this period of time. That's right, Lee Yi does have other plans. And this plan is to kill Hyuga Fujihawk. To be honest, in Lee Yi's eyes, the current Hyuga Fujihawk is already a dead person. So, no matter how Hyuga Fujitaka provokes him, he is indifferent. An autumn grasshopper, let him jump, let's see how long he can jump. Lee Yi looked at Uchiha Makoto and asked, How long will it take for Hokage-sama to come back? At least half an hour. Uchiha Makoto said, The Hyuga family is not near here, and this is not a trivial matter, so, at least half an hour. Half an hour. Lee Yi narrowed his eyes and nodded. What are you thinking about? Looking at Lee Yi who was thinking, Uchiha Makoto asked curiously. I didn't think of anything. Lee Yi shook his head. Really? Uchiha Makoto was a little unconvinced. Just now, she caught a trace of killing intent in Lee Yi's eyes. Obviously, this killing intent is aimed at Hyuga Fujihawk. She wondered what exactly Lee Yi planned. Because she didn't want to see Lee Yi make mistakes. Has already said not to kill Hyuga Fujihawk. If Lee Yi insists on killing Hyuga Fujihawk, then he is disobeying Lord Hokage. By then, Lee Yi will be guilty of a big crime. So, in order to prevent Lee Yi from making mistakes, Uchiha Makoto said, Lee Yi, this guy has a mental problem, and what he said is deliberately angering you. you don't want to fall for his aggressive tactics. Li Yi nodded. In fact, he knew the psychology of Hyuga Fuji Eagle at this time. Li Yi not only defeated him, but also abolished his hands and feet, which made him very angry. However, now he can't beat Li Yi. Li Yi with words. He seemed to think that Li Yi did not dare to kill him, that's why he was so arrogant. And the reason why he has such arrogance is all because of Sarutobi Hiruzen. Sarutobi Hiruzen has ordered him to be brought back to the Hyuga clan, then Li Yi can't kill him. However, what he didn't know was that what Li Yi was thinking about now was how to kill him. In Li Yi's eyes, he must die. However, just as Li Yi was thinking, a knock on the door suddenly sounded. Boom. Immediately after that, Ayame's crisp voice. Brother Li Yi, are you at home? Uchiha Makoto immediately turned to look at Li Yi and asked, do you want to let her in? It's okay, let her in. Li Yi nodded lightly. Usually at this time, Ayame would come to his house and cook for him. Uchiha Makoto walked to the door and opened it. Makoto, good evening. Ayame said hello. He walked in with a small packet of ingredients. When he saw Hyuga Fujihawk on the sofa, Ayame was taken aback and couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva and asked, Brother Li Yi, who is he? His name is Hyuga Fujihawk, and he's our missing nin from Konoha village. Li Yi introduced. I met him outside the village and defeated him. The reason why I brought him home now is because Lord Hokage will come and take him away. Don't worry, Lord Hokage has set him up. After the seal, now he is not even a dog, and will not hurt us. In order not to frighten Ayame, Li Yi explained the situation in detail. Hyuga's mouth twitched. Ayame breathed a sigh of relief. However, she still dared not look directly at Hyuga Fujihawk. After all, the latter's face is really too hideous and terrifying. Oh right, Brother Li Yi, we are eating mushrooms today. These mushrooms are all I picked in the mountains a few days ago, and they are not poisonous. Ayame picked up the dish in his hand and said. After speaking, she carried a small bag of mushrooms and walked into the kitchen. Mushrooms. Li Yi squinted his eyes lit up slightly, as if he had thought of something. At this moment, Hyuga Tengying said with a hoarse smile, Hee, I didn't expect that so many women would favor you as a kid. You are really a little white face. Over the top. Li Yi's face remained unchanged, and he replied lightly. Hee, there is a knife on the head of the color, and anyone who pursues seductive love will have no good end. Hyuga Fujihawk sneered and provocatively said, when I saw you now, I already expected that in 30 or 40 years, you would be hacked to death in the war. Yo, I can still live 30 or 40 years. I didn't expect my lifespan to be so long. Thank you so much for your kind words. Li Yi's expression remained the same, and said lightly. Before, no matter how Hyuga Fujitaka provoked Li Yi pretended not to hear and didn't answer. However, now, Li Yi has started to counterattack. And, as soon as he speaks, he can hold back Hyuga Fujihawk. Now, after hearing Li Yi's words, Hyuga Fujitaka was slightly taken aback, not knowing what to answer for a while. Suddenly, Uchiha Makoto walked up to Li Yi's side, put it in his ear, and said in a low voice, Li Yi, those mushrooms that Ayame brought are actually poisonous. Huh. Li Yi frowned, and his first reaction was, is that girl Ayame trying to hurt me? But then, this idea was ruled out by him. Because Ayame has no reason to hurt him. Therefore, Li Yi asked, what's going on? Uchiha Makoto said, actually, all wild mushrooms are poisonous, the difference is in the amount of toxins. The mushrooms brought by Ayame are indeed poisonous, but the poison is very low and it does little harm to the human body. Even if the physique is extremely, the poor people will not die because of this, at most it will only be a few times of diarrhea. Quote. Hearing this, Li Yi touched his chin. That is to say, although it is poisonous, it is not strong, and the human body is completely immune to this poison, right? Yes, That's what it means. Uchiha Makoto nodded lightly. As an old saying goes, medicine is 3-part poison. Although medicine can save lives, it is also toxic, but the toxicity is very low, and the human body is completely immune. Even medicines are 3-part poison, let alone this wild plants. Quote. Uchiha Makoto talked eloquently. Reason why she told Lee Yi this was because she didn't want to see Lee Yi and Hyuga Fujihawk have a verbal conflict. She did this to divert Lee Yi's attention. However, what she didn't expect was that because of her words, Lee Yi came up with a brilliant idea. Chapter 130 to piss him off. First more. Lee Yi came to the kitchen. A heat wave hits. Ayame is making mushroom soup. Seeing Lee Yi coming, Ayame blinked and asked, "Brother Lee Yi, what are you doing here? Get out quickly, it's very hot here." Lee Yi didn't answer, but glanced at the mushrooms on the table. Then, he picked up a mushroom, broke off a piece, and put it in his mouth. Seeing this scene, Ayame's face changed slightly, and he asked incredulously, "Brother Lee Yi, what are you doing? This thing can't be eaten raw. Isn't this thing non-toxic?" Lee Yi shrugged and asked. Ayame choked, and then replied, "It's not poisonous. However, this thing can only be eaten when it is cooked. Before it is cooked, it is best not to eat it raw. There are many bacteria and microorganisms on it, which are harmful to the human body. It's okay, it's just diarrhea at most." Lee Yi smiled and shook his head, chewing mushrooms, and said inarticulately. Seeing Lee Yi insist, Ayame didn't say much. Lee Yi swallowed the mushroom in his mouth, and suddenly, a bitter feeling entered his nerves, causing Lee Yi to frown. "It's so unpalatable." He frowned secretly. However, Lee Yi didn't think much about it, and took out a raw mushroom again. Ayame blinked and asked, "Brother Lee Yi, what are you doing? Why are you taking raw mushrooms? I think these mushrooms are pretty good looking. Take them for viewing." Lee Yi said with a smile. "Pretty?" Ayame blinked, looking at the gray mushroom in Lee Yi's hand, and was a little stunned for a while. "Is this mushroom pretty? Lee Yi's aesthetics are so different." As expected of Brother Lee Yi. Just different from ordinary people. An instant, Ayame's admiration for Lee Yi was even more so. "Thank you for your hard work, then I'll go out first." Lee Yi said. "Okay Brother Lee Yi, go out quickly, it's very hot here." Ayame head tapped. Lee Yi took the mushrooms and walked out of the kitchen. Ayame didn't think much, and continued to boil the soup. Lee Yi came to the living room. Hyuga Fujihawk was still sitting half dead on the sofa, looking stunned. Perhaps it was Lee Yi who just opened the kitchen door and let the fragrance in the kitchen waft out, so Hyuga Fujihawk's stomach began to make a hungry cry. Gollum. Hyuga Vine Eagle is hungry. Although his strength is very strong, but he is also flesh and blood after all, and he has to drink water to eat. For 1 or 2 days today, he almost didn't eat, and he had had such a fierce battle with Lee Yi before that his hands and feet were broken, and the energy in his body was consumed a lot. So now, smelling the aroma of the food, his stomach involuntarily let out a protesting cry. "Hungry?" Lee Yi asked with a smile. Hyuga Fujihawk did not speak. Lee Yi broke off a piece of the mushroom in his hand, put it in his mouth, chewed it for a while, then swallowed it and said, "Tisk tisk, this mushroom is really delicious, sweet and crunchy." Hearing this, Hyuga Fujihawk's face was moved. He was already very hungry, and now Lee Yi is still showing delicious food in front of him, how can he bear it? On the other hand, Uchiha Makoto frowned. She knew the mushroom in Lee Yi's hand and knew that it was best not to eat it raw, not only because of the trace amount of toxins, but most importantly, it was very hard to eat raw. However, Lee Yi said the mushrooms are delicious. Could it be that his tongue is different from that of ordinary people? Or does he have other purposes? Uchiha Makoto stared at Lee with her suspicious eyes. Hyuga Fujihawk, Lee Yi weighed the mushrooms in his hands and asked with a smile, "Would you like to eat them?" Hyuga Fujihawk swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He was already very hungry, and Lee also described the mushrooms in his hands as delicious. Know how he can take it. He wants to eat it. However, Hyuga Fujihawk has its own dignity. Even if he starved to death, died outside, and jumped off a cliff, he wouldn't eat a bite of Lee's food. Hyuga Fujitaka, is an ambitious person. Not to mention a mushroom, even chicken, duck, beef and mutton will not impress Lao Su. So, Hyuga Fujihawk turned his head sharply and stopped looking at Lee. To be precise, he stopped looking at the mushrooms in Lee's hands. Out of sight, out of mind. However, he didn't want to see it. It didn't mean that Lee didn't show it to him. He just turned his head away, but Lee walked in front of him again, handed the mushroom in his hand to Hyuga Tengying, and asked with a smile, "If you want to eat it, I will give it to you. After all, your injury is so serious that you have to eat it. Order something good and replenish your nutrition." Quote. After finishing speaking, Lee handed the mushroom in his hand to Hyuga Fujihawk. Hyuga Fujihawk frowned slightly, not knowing why Lee did this. You know, Lee is his enemy, and he wants to die. How could he be so kind? What is he trying to do? Hyuga Fujitaka looked at Lee with a hint of suspicion. Lee still just smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's not poisonous." After speaking, Lee took the initiative to break off a piece of mushroom, put it in his mouth, chewed a few mouthfuls and swallowed it. Then, he handed the mushrooms to Hyuga Fujihawk and asked, "This thing is delicious, I'll ask you again, you only have one chance to eat it. If you don't eat it, forget it." Hyuga Tengying is cautious by nature, he is not a timid person. Seeing that Lee has tried his own poison, he is no longer hypocritical and nodded directly, "Eat." Lee smiled slightly, "Okay." After finishing speaking, Lee handed the mushroom to Hyuga's mouth. Looking at Lee's hand, Hyuga Fujihawk suddenly had the urge to bite off Lee's hand. However, now he has no strength in his body, and he can't bite Lee at all. Therefore, he could only give up this plan and honestly ate a piece of mushroom. However, just after eating the mushrooms and chewing a bite, Hyuga Fujihawk's face immediately turned ashen. Bah! The next moment, he spit out the mushroom in his mouth and cursed, "You kid playing with me. This thing is so unpalatable, do you want to poison Lousy to death?" Although his voice was not loud, his tone was very hysterical, obviously very angry. Looking at the embarrassed Hyuga Fujihawk, Lee said with a smile, "It seems that our tastes are not the same." Uchiha Makoto on the side just laughed out loud, covering his mouth with a smile on his face. No wonder Lee said that this mushroom is delicious, it is for the whole Hyuga Rattan Eagle. Bah, bah, bah. The taste of raw mushrooms was bitter and astringent, which made Hyuga Fujihawk both bad. It was only at this moment that he suddenly realized that Lee was deliberately disgusting him. Damn boy, what a poisonous heart. 2200 of the next update. Chapter 131 Lee's Plan. Uchiha Makoto approached Lee and asked, "You're only making him angry by doing this." Obviously, Uchiha Makoto also felt that Lee was deliberately disgusting Hyuga Fujihawk. Lee smiled mysteriously, and then said, "He is so provocative to me, I don't feel bad about him, I feel sorry for myself." You have a very dark heart. Uchiha Makoto stretched out his jade finger and poked Lee's chest. No, this is what I call repaying the person's body with the way of the person. Lee shook his head. Well, I can't tell you. Uchiha Makoto smiled helplessly. In short, as long as you don't kill him, it doesn't matter what you do. Don't kill him, do you? Lee murmured repeatedly without saying much. However, if Uchiha Makoto knew that what he did just now was not to disgust Hyuga Fujihawk, but to kill him, how would Uchiha Makoto react? Crunch. At this moment, the kitchen door was opened, and Ayame came out with a bowl of hot mushroom soup. Eat, eat. Ayame, voice is very clear, like the clear cry of a lark, which is gentle and moving. The rich aroma floated out from the hot mushroom soup, making the stomach tremble for a while. Li Yi's stomach also screamed in protest at this moment. He had been exercising for most of the day today, and even had a life and death battle with Hyuga Fujihawk. His physical strength had already been exhausted, and there was not much energy in his body. Now, of course, he will feel hungry when he smells this fragrance. Not only Li Yi, but also Uchiha Makoto. As for Hyuga Fujitaka, when I saw the mushroom soup in Ayame's hands, I drooled instantly. He was already extremely hungry, but now he smells such a fragrant smell, and his stomach is even more hungry. However, Hyuga Fujihawk also has his own self-esteem, and he didn't want to compromise, so he turned his head sharply and stopped looking. Out of sight, out of mind. However, although he couldn't see it, the scent was everywhere. Although he had turned his head away, saliva still leaked from his mouth. In order to prevent the saliva from flowing out, Hyuga Fujitaka could only keep swallowing his saliva, which was very funny. After a while, Ayame brought out 3 bowls of hot mushroom soup and placed them on the table. Li Yi sat on the table. Li Yi said with a smile, "Although this mushroom is not tasty when eaten raw, after cooking it, I didn't expect it to taste so fragrant. It's really unbelievable. Okay, stop talking, let's start eating," Uchiha Makoto said. So, Ayame and Uchiha Makoto put their hands together, closed their eyes, and chanted the slogan, "I'm starting," and the two began to drink mushroom soup. Li Yi didn't do that, but started drinking the soup directly. Because the mushroom soup was very hot, the 3 of them could only suck and drink it, and that was the reason, but when they drank the soup, they made a stinging sound. Hyuga Fujihawk finally couldn't stand it anymore. Originally, the smell of mushroom soup made his stomach twitch. Now, when he heard the sound of 3 people drinking soup, his nerves couldn't hold back. Most importantly, he also sneaked a glance at the mushroom soup. Eyes, nose, ears, 3 senses were stimulated, which made him, who was already very hungry, finally unable to bear it. So, he said directly, "Hey, do you have any leftover mushroom soup? Can you give me a bowl?" Although his voice was weak, his tone was firm. Hearing his words, Li Yi smiled, stopped drinking the soup, and asked, "Want to drink soup? I can satisfy you." "Really?" Hyuga Fujihawk's eyes lit up. "I'm never an empty talker." Li Yi nodded, but then changed the subject. "But, first, you have to promise me a condition." "What conditions?" Hyuga Fujitaka asked. "Tell out all the information you know, all the information, and you answer what I ask." Li Yi squinted his eyes and said. Hearing this, Hyuga Fujitaka was stunned for a moment, but he didn't expect Li Yi's condition to be so simple. However, he didn't think much, but nodded and agreed. "No problem, what do you want to ask?" "Just ask." Li Yi nodded and stretched out a finger. "First, Anning Village, has it been destroyed?" Hyuga Vine Eagle shook his head. "No." "Oh." Li Yi was a little surprised. Hanzo of the Salamander is a very cautious person who will not let go of any threat, cutting the weeds and rooting them out. Now that he has found Anning Village, he will definitely not let go of every flower and tree in Anning Village. Li Yi thought that Anning Village had been destroyed and Tianbao had been martyred. But I didn't expect that Anning Village still exists. Real or fake? Hyuga Fujihawk is a person who has been away from home for many years, so before Li Yi asked, he said, "Although you have been to Anning Village, according to our investigation, Anning Village has nothing to do with you. You have only stayed in Anning Village for a while, and the villagers in Anning Village were just deceived by you. They didn't know about it, and those who didn't know were innocent, so they are still alive." Quote. Hearing this, Li Yi nodded, and then asked again, "Is it you or Hanzo of the Salamander who is in charge of the investigation in Anning Village?" Hyuga Fujihawk immediately shook his head. How could Master Hanzo be personally involved in such a small issue, and the one investigating Anning village is only a special Jonin from the land of rain. So it is. Li Yi nodded. It seems to be because of Tianbao. If Hanzo of the Salamander personally came out, then Anning village would have already been wiped out. Jonin from the land of rain who investigated Anning village. Tianbao knew many ninjas in the land of rain, and if Tianbao was there, he could mediate with them. It is precisely because of Hanzo of the Salamander's cautiousness that he will not do anything by himself. This is both his strength and his weakness. If he checks it himself, then, with his temperament, he will definitely be able to check it. A clue. Li Yi thought secretly in his heart, it's a pity that cleverness is mistaken by cleverness. Do you have any questions? Hyuga Fujitaka asked again. Li Yi came back to his senses, then stretched out 2 fingers and asked, second question, how long have you been in the Kingdom of Rain? 5 years. Hyuga Fujitaka replied. 5 years, then you should know the specific combat power of the Rain country. Li Yi asked. Of course I do. Hyuga Fujihawk nodded proudly, and then asked, why, are you interested in this kind of thing? Li Yi said with no expression on his face, I'm asking you questions now, not you. You have to answer whatever I ask you, understand? Chapter 132 The Truth of the Year. Li Yi asked about the specific combat power of the Kingdom of Rain, that is, he wanted to attack the Kingdom of Rain. Hanzo of the Salamander is a very cautious person. Since Li Yi has already provoked him, he will never let Li Yi go. This time Hyuga Fuji Eagle is sent to kill Li Yi. Next time he will send a stronger person come and kill Li Yi. From then on, Li Yi will never have peace. Therefore, it is necessary for Li Yi to deal with Hanzo of the Salamander. However, Hanzo of the Salamander is the leader of the Kingdom of Rain after all. To deal with Hanzo of the Salamander is to deal with the entire Kingdom of Rain. Therefore, Li Yi needs to know the specific combat power information of the Kingdom of Rain in order to make more adequate preparations. Hyuga Fujitaka has always been a person who is very good at assessing the situation. He knew that he would not be able to leave Konoha village for a while, so he had no ink, and told the specific combat strength of the Kingdom of Rain. After listening to Hyuga Fujihawk's words, Li Yi nodded, 10 elite Jonins, 27 ordinary Jonins, and 48 special Jonins. This overall combat power is indeed not weak. Although the territory of the Kingdom of Rain is not large, the overall combat power of the Kingdom of Rain is not weak. In the setting of the original work of Hokage, there are more than 5,000 ninjas in Konoha village, including nearly 150 ninjas in particular Jonin and above. The territory of the Kingdom of Rain is more than double that of Konoha village, but the Kingdom of Rain, especially Jonin and above, has 80 or 90 strong people. No wonder the country of Rain can ignite the fuse of the Second Ninja War. If there is no certain strength, how can it ignite World War II? Boy, what are you asking about this? Could it be that you still want to destroy the Kingdom of Rain? Hyuga Fujihawk asked with a disdainful smile. Unexpectedly, Li Yi nodded. I do have this plan. Hyuga Fujihawk's eyes narrowed slightly. However, Li Yi added, but I don't have this ability now. Hyuga Fujihawk sneered. I don't have the ability to say such things. Isn't this bragging? The mouth is on me, I can say whatever I want, you can control it. Li Yi shrugged. Afterwards, Li Yi asked Hyuga Fujihawk a few more questions. Hyuga Fujihawk didn't want to answer Li Yi's questions, he wanted to eat more, so he had to answer Li Yi's questions one by one. Of course, Li Yi did not completely believe what Hyuga Fujitaka said. As an adult, he has his own judgment standards. After asking 4 or 5 questions in a row, Hyuga Fujihawk finally became impatient and asked, Hey, my boy, have you finished asking? I'm starving to death. Starve me to death, your Hokage-sama. I will blame you, will you be able to shoulder this responsibility then? Quote. Hearing this, Li Yi smiled, went to the kitchen and filled a bowl of hot mushroom soup, and handed it to Hyuga Fujihawk's mouth. Because Hyuga Fujihawk has no hands, it can only be fed and drunk by Li Yi. Mushroom soup is delicious. Hyuga Tengying was also not too hot. Gurgles, he drank a whole bowl of mushroom soup into his stomach in a few mouthfuls, and he swallowed all the mushrooms in the soup whole. One bowl is not enough, Hyuga Fuji Eagle asked, are there any more? Looking at the empty bowl, Li Yi smiled mysteriously. Then, he shook his head and said, no, that's all. After speaking, Li Yi got up, walked back to the kitchen, and filled himself with a bowl of hot mushroom soup. I have to say, Ayame's cooking skills are good. Although there is some meat residue in the mushroom soup, there is not much meat. These ingredients alone can make such delicious things, which is enough to prove Ayame's cooking skills. Seeing Li Yi drinking mushroom soup, Hyuga Tengying was drooling with greed, begging Li Yi to give him another bowl. However, Li Yi didn't give him a shot at all. This makes Hyuga Fujihawk a little angry. Li Yi has been ignoring him. Hyuga Tengying finally couldn't bear it anymore, and yelled at Li Yi, you bastard, after I recover, I won't let you go, you just wait for me. When there is a chance in the future, let's see I can't kill you. Li Yi still didn't change his face, as if he hadn't heard Hyuga's words at all. However, after Uchiha Makoto heard the words, he really couldn't listen anymore. He put the chopsticks on the table, made a crisp sound, turned his head to look at Hyuga Fujitaka, and said, it's already generous for you to eat. Are you still here to ask for 3 or 4? You don't pee and take care of yourself. Hyuga Fujihawk, it's a love for you to eat, it's a duty not to eat for you. If you stick your nose on your face like this, I'll throw you out. Uchiha Mikoto's voice is clear and loud, and the woman does not let the man. Looking at such a strong Uchiha Makoto, Hyuga Fujitaka swallowed. He was not frightened by Uchiha Makoto's aura, but he saw a familiar shadow on Uchiha Makoto's body. That time, his wife also protected her husband like Uchiha Makoto. It's a pity that his wife was secretly disposed of by Anbu of Konoha village following his failure to contend for the throne. And this is the real root cause of his betrayal. He already had a wife at that time, and his wife was pregnant. Even if he did not succeed in becoming Hokage, he would not betray. After all, he had to think about his own woman and his unborn child. Unexpectedly, Anbu from Konoha village, in order to eliminate dissidents and eliminate all threats, secretly disposed of his wife, in order to force him to defect. Seeing the strong Uchiha Makoto, Hyuga Fujihawk couldn't help but think of the past, and his eyes were instantly covered with a layer of tears. His virtuous wife was also like Uchiha Makoto to protect her husband. It's a pity that the deceased is like this. In this life, he will never see his good wife again. Suddenly, Hyuga Fujihawk frowned. Because he felt a little uncomfortable in his stomach. But the next moment, the pain disappeared. Hyuga Fujihawk didn't think much about it, and Kwandang himself was too injured, causing all kinds of physical discomfort. However, he did not see that there was an extremely sinister arc on the corner of Li Yi's mouth. Time goes by. When the 3 were full, the 3rd-generation Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen also brought the Hyuga family to Li Yi's house. Sarutobi Hiruzen brought was an older woman who looked to be in her 60s or 70s. Her eyes, unlike ordinary people, are a pair of Byakugan, but because of her age, her Byakugan has become slightly cloudy. When Hyuga Fujihawk saw this woman, her face changed suddenly. Chapter 133 Hyuga Little Spirit. The visitor was a woman in her 60s or 70s. However, Hyuga Fujihawk, who has always been fearless, changed her face suddenly after seeing this woman. Suddenly, he turned his head away, as if he didn't want this woman to see his face. Seeing Hyuga Fujihawk behaving like this, Li Yi squinted his eyes and said to himself, it seems like an old acquaintance. Sure enough, when the woman saw Hyuga Fujihawk, she said, you renegade son, you are back. Hearing this, Li Yi raised his brows slightly and said to himself, yo. Could it be his old mother? Hyuga Fujihawk didn't answer, and didn't seem to hear at all. Woman walked quickly in front of Hyuga Tengyun, slapped him in the face with a slap in the face, mercilessly, and made a crisp sound. The pain in his cheek made Hyuga Fujihawk instantly angry. He lowered his voice and said, "Sister-in-law, I did nothing wrong from the beginning, why did you hit me?" Hearing this, Li Yi blinked. It turned out to be my sister-in-law. I thought it was my mother. Woman snorted coldly and said, "I don't know you yet, you are not expected to be Hokage. Besides, if you fail, you should stay here honestly, but you are better, actually chose to betray. I'm afraid I've been living outside comfortably for the past few years, right?" Hyuga Tengying smiled disdainfully and said, "Sister-in-law, to tell you the truth, I have a very comfortable life. No matter which country I go to, the host of that country has to treat me as a guest." However, before Hyuga Fujitaka finished speaking, the woman slapped him in the face again. Crack! With a crisp sound, Hyuga's cheek, which was originally facing left, is now directly facing right, turning 180 degrees. Woman lowered her voice and shouted, "In front of Lord Hokage, don't glib on me here. Since you're back now, just go back with me honestly, and don't think about anything else." Speaking, without waiting for Hyuga Tengying to reply, the woman turned her head and looked at Li Yi who was beside her. She first glanced up and down at Li Yi, and then said, "Young man, young and promising, not bad, not bad." Although she was praising Li Yi, for some reason, after hearing his praise, Li Yi felt a chill inexplicably. Li Yi frowned slightly and said in his heart, "It seems that this woman has some opinions on me." However, on the surface, Li Yi still shook his head humbly and said, "You're wrong, I'm just a nameless boy with nothing to do when I'm young." Hearing this, the woman just laughed and didn't say much. Then, she looked at Uchiha Makoto again and said, "The princess of the Uchiha clan is actually in this place, I'm a little surprised." Uchiha Makoto shook his head, and he laughed. "Li Yi and I were good friends. We were training together when Hyuga Fujihawk suddenly rushed out to kill Li Yi. We were also helpless and had to be forced to defend." Li Yi could hear the chill in the woman's words, and Uchiha Makoto could hear it even more. She knew that the woman must have some opinions on Li Yi, and even planned to deal with Li Yi. After all, no matter what, Hyuga Fujihawk is also the bloodline of the Hyuga family, and the uncle of the woman in front of her. Hyuga Fujihawk is, as a sister-in-law, she doesn't want to see Hyuga Fujihawk have an accident. And now, Hyuga Fujihawk has lost both hands and feet, as if she has become a waste, so is Hyuga's formed sister-in-law, how can she not be angry? Therefore, Uchiha Makoto will explain, intending to let the woman let Li Yi. Although as the princess of the Uchiha family, she has looked down on the Hyuga family since she was a child, but the Hyuga family is one of the most powerful families in Konoha village and one of the most loyal families in Konoha village. If this family intends to deal with Li Yi, then, Li Yi must die. Uchiha Makoto doesn't want to see something happen to Li Yi. Hearing Uchiha Makoto's words, the woman did not reply, but took a deep look at Li Yi and Uchiha Makoto again, as if to remember their faces. The end, she turned around, looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen at the door, pointed at Hyuga Fujitaka and asked, "Lord Hokage, can I bring this bad boy back now?" Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded and said at the same time, "Tengying had a close relationship with me back then. If it wasn't for the farce that year, he wouldn't have betrayed him. Go back and persuade him well, and don't let him seek short-sightedness." Woman nodded, her voice a bit old, but strong and powerful. "Lord Hokage, I will definitely discipline him. If I don't correct his wrong thoughts, I won't let it out of the Hyuga family. Hyuga, do what I say and do." 2. Sarutobi Hiruzen nodded without saying much. Hyuga Xiaoling suddenly grabbed Hyuga Vine Eagle's arm, threw it to the ground, and kicked him in the crook of his crotch, making him kneel in front of Li Yi. Hyuga Xiaoling shouted coldly, "Apologize to him quickly, today, if he doesn't forgive you, you will always kneel here." Hyuga Fujihawk, Uchiha's expression changed. Let me apologize to this kid. Impossible. This kid ruined my hands and feet, how could I apologize to him? I can't even apologize to him for killing me. Stop dreaming. Li Yi narrowed his eyes. He glanced at the aura of the woman, her eyebrows slightly wrinkled. Uchiha Makoto also seemed to think that Hyuga Xiaoling's approach was a bit extreme, so he persuaded, Auntie, there is no need to apologize. As long as you can make him change his ways, this is the best apology. However, before Uchiha Makoto finished speaking, the woman interrupted, the little girl of the Uchiha family, if he makes a mistake, he has to apologize. If he doesn't get the forgiveness of the victim, then he has to kneel here until he dies. So far. The woman's tone was extremely strong. Uchiha Makoto said no more. Hyuga Fujihawk was kneeling on the ground, he didn't want to apologize at all, so he turned his head and showed a tugging look to resist. Woman was about to give an order. Li Yi said, Okay, I forgive him, let this go over like this, old man, take him back. Although Li Yi's tone was a little impatient, after the woman heard the words, she said nothing, nodded and pulled Hyuga Fujihawk from the ground, looked at him and said, Since he has forgiven you, then the grievances between you will be written off like this, let's go, I'll take you home. After speaking, the woman carried Hyuga Fujihawk on her shoulders and carried him out of the door. Sarutobi Hiruzen asked, Should I send someone to help? Woman immediately shook her head. Thank you Lord Hokage for your kindness, but I'm still young. The woman walked while talking, and when she finished speaking, she had already walked away. Li Yi still squinted his eyes, and in the depths of those eyes, a strange light flashed. Chapter 134 Cut the grass to root out. Sarutobi Hiruzen left. However, before leaving, Sarutobi Hiruzen also said something to Li Yi, Come to the office to meet me tomorrow morning. Li Yi nodded. He knew that Sarutobi Hiruzen was definitely going to reward him. He caught the traitor in Konoha village, and he was not an ordinary traitor. This was a great achievement, and Sarutobi Hiruzen would of course reward him. Sarutobi Hiruzen go away, Li Yi returns to the house with Uchiha Makoto and Ayame. Seeing that Li Yi's face was a little strange, Uchiha Makoto asked, What's wrong? Is there something wrong? Li Yi said, Do you know that Hyuga little spirit? Uchiha Makoto nodded. They heard of it, but I'm not very familiar with it. Li Yi smiled and said deeply, This guy, I'm afraid he has some opinions on me. Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly, waiting for Li Yi's next words. However, Li Yi didn't speak, just said, Forget it, let's not talk about her, let's make the next plan. Uchiha Makoto nodded suspiciously. She always felt that Li Yi had something to hide from her. However, since Lin Chen didn't want to say more, she wouldn't ask more. Because she knew that even if she asked, she couldn't get an answer, so she might as well not waste her words. You explain the specific situation to Ayame first, and I'll go take a shower. Li Yi said. After speaking, Li Yi turned around and walked into the bathroom. Ayame blinked. What specific situation? Li Yi talking about? Uchiha Makoto took Ayame's little hand and said, Ayame, I have already checked out the specific information about Lexus, I will tell you about it now. Hearing this, Ayame's body trembled slightly, and he spit in a mouthful of spit, as if he was a little scared. That's right. Now when I hear the words, turn to bed Lexus, I am very scared. Aware of Ayame's fear, Uchiha Makoto patted his right hand lightly, comforting her, then pulled her, sat on the sofa, and said, Actually, there's nothing scary about turning to Lexus. In the previous training, Li Yi told Uchiha Makoto that when introducing Lexus to Ayame, he must avoid the important and not let her worry too much. So, now, Uchiha Makoto is hiding some of the real situation, and what Lexus said is not so terrible. Ayame was a little skeptical, she was still young, so she believed it. Sure enough, after she heard it, the panic on her face was much less than before. After 10 minutes, Lee Yi came out of the shower. Uchiha Makoto and Ayame are still talking to each other. Seeing this scene, Lee Yi smiled and said in his heart, "Sure enough, the topics between women are endless." And seeing Lee Yi come out, Uchiha Makoto slowly got up and said, "Sister Ayame, I'm going to take a shower too, talk to your brother Lee Yi." "Well, okay." Ayame's head was light, and he looked very well behaved. In fact, when I first saw Uchiha Makoto a few days ago, Ayame had a hostile attitude towards Uchiha Makoto. But now, this hostile attitude has gradually disappeared. Because she knows that Uchiha Makoto is not a bad person, she will not harm brother Lee Yi. Of course, Ayame is also a woman. Although she is not young, it is hard to hold two tigers in one mountain. In her heart, she still resists Uchiha Makoto. Lee Yi wrapped a bath towel, walked to Ayame's side, and said, "When my hair is dry, I'll send you back." Ayame hummed and nodded slightly. Lee Yi asked again, "That Lexus, did he harass you today?" "No." Ayame shook his head and said, "Although he came to the ramen restaurant today, but the ramen restaurant was too busy. I didn't talk to him, and my dad was by his side, he didn't dare to do anything to me in front of my dad." "Is that so?" Lee Yi nodded, his eyes narrowed slightly. Ayame suddenly asked, "Brother Lee Yi, Sister Makoto said that the power of turning Lexus is not large, is this true?" "Really?" Lee Yi smiled, nodded and said, "If he harass you again in the future, you can mention your sister Makoto's name. He is still very jealous of your sister Makoto." "So Makoto's sister is so powerful?" Ayame was a little surprised. "Of course she's great." Lee Yi smiled and nodded. "After all, she is the princess of the Uchiha clan, can she be awesome?" However, there is one more thing that Lee Yi didn't say to Ayame. "One Uchiha Makoto, I'm afraid I can't stop moving to Lexus. After all, behind Lexus, there is the big Buddha, Kaharu Utatane. Even the 3 generations of Hokage are a little afraid of Kaharu Utatane, let alone Uchiha Makoto. If Kaharu Utatane is sensible, then, let Uchiha Makoto negotiate with her, let her educate her brother well, and prohibit Lexus from harassing Ayame, that's all." However, Kaharu Utatane dotes on her younger brother very much. No matter what Lexus does, she feels it is fine. If anyone dares to obstruct Lexus, then it is against her, Kaharu Utatane. I have to say that Kaharu Utatane is really good at handling government affairs, but when it comes to handling household chores, he is a group of spicy chickens. Of course, everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and Kaharu Utatane is understandable. After all, there are no perfect people in this world. Therefore, Uchiha Makoto alone may not be able to completely suppress Lexus, and even if he can, it can only be suppressed for a while. Therefore, only solve the problem from the source. Weeds need to be rooted out. This is Lee Yi's plan. These days, when I'm not by your side, you stay by your father's side. Don't run around alone, understand? Lee Yi reminded. Ayame nodded. After a while, Uchiha Makoto finished washing. She came out wrapped in a bath towel. She also washed her head by the way, and her long hair was also wrapped in a bath towel. Her elegant neck showed her collarbone, because the length of the bath towel was not long, so her smooth long legs were also looming, and the whole person gave a very charming feeling. Lee Yi looked her up and down, to be precise, he looked at her up and down. "Well, I have a good figure, slim front and back, I can score 9 points, no makeup is also good, facial features are good, I can score 9.2 points, this kind of lady's temperament is also very good, I can score 9.4 points, the average score is 9.2 points. Lee Yi silently gave Uchiha Makoto a score in his heart. In fact, as a man who has read countless women, when Lee Yi was on Earth, he liked to rate women very much. His scoring mainly depends on 3 factors, appearance, body, temperament, and finally takes an average score. And now, He gave Uchiha Makoto a score of 9.2. Chapter 135 _ My Girlfriend. Lee Yi, carefully, admired Uchiha Makoto's body appearance. Seeing Lee Yi like this, Ayame's small mouth pouted slightly and seemed a little angry. However, seeing Uchiha Makoto's proud figure, Ayame was a little dejected. People are more popular than dead people. However, in the end, Ayame still cheered himself up in his heart. I haven't grown up yet. When I grow up, my figure will definitely be better than Makoto's sister. Uchiha Makoto asked, "Aren't you going to send Ayame home?" Lee Yi replied, "I will send it here." Uchiha Makoto head taps, "Okay." Afterwards, Lee Yi got dressed and sent Ayame home. On the way, the air was chilly. Lee Yi sneezed. After all, after taking a shower, the cold wind blows, can you not sneeze? Ayame said with concern, "Brother Lee Yi, don't catch a cold, you should go back quickly, I'll just go home by myself." Lee Yi shook his head. "No, even in the village, there is danger, I have to protect you." Ayame's heart warmed. In this world, there are only two teenagers who want to protect her, one is her father and the other is Lee Yi. Looking at Lee Yi, Ayame had a huge sense of security, which made her feel very at ease. Lee Yi and Ayame were walking and talking, each and every one of your words. However, as soon as the two turned into a street, they saw a figure standing under the street lamp ahead. Because the light was too dim and the distance between the two sides was very far, Lee Yi couldn't see each other's true faces. However, when Ayame saw this figure, his body trembled and his face turned pale instantly. However, because of the dim light, Lee Yi did not see Ayame's pale face, but Lee Yi could feel that Ayame's little hands were sweating coldly, and his body was shaking slightly, as if he was a little scared. "No, drop the word, seems." Immediately, Lee Yi understood. The person in front must be the boy who harassed Ayame all day. Lee Yi smiled and pulled Ayame forward. Ayame wanted to take a detour, but Lee Yi's big warm hand gave her an invisible sense of security, so she didn't resist, but followed Lee Yi obediently. The closer the distance, the more Lee Yi could see the true face of the figure. This is a boy who looks only 15 or 16 years old. He has long hair and a handsome face. The bangs in front of his forehead cover his left eye. At this moment, the boy folds his arms, bows his head and does not speak, leaning on the street lamp Jinchuriki column, giving a cool feeling. However, Lee Yi didn't seem to see him and pulled Ayame to pass him by. Completely ignore him. However, before Lee Yi took a few steps, a slightly immature voice suddenly sounded behind the two of them, "Stop." Although the voice is not loud, the commanding taste in the tone is self-evident. Ayame's body trembled slightly, and he seemed a little frightened. However, Lee Yi didn't seem to hear the sound, instead he still pulled Ayame and walked into the distance. "Don't pay attention to the person behind you at all. I told you two to stop." The voice sounded again, and there was already a trace of anger in the tone. However, Lee Yi still didn't hear it, he continued to pull Ayame, and walked slowly into the distance. "Damn bastards! Are you deaf? Can't hear me?" Suddenly there was a loud shout from behind. Almost at the same time, the Russian sound rang out, and the boy leaning on the street lamp Jinchuriki column ran towards Lee Yi. His speed was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, he came behind Lee Yi and punched Lee Yi's back. This punch is merciless, and the attack part is extremely tricky. If Lee Yi suffers, he must be seriously injured. However, just at the critical moment, Lee Yi suddenly turned around, stretched out his hands, grabbed the punch of the boy, and then spun in place, using his strength, to throw the boy out. Teenager didn't expect that Lee Yi would use this kind of leverage, but he didn't react for a while, and his body involuntarily rushed forward. However, just before he threw himself to the ground, the young man reacted suddenly, and immediately straightened his feet, stepped on the ground, and borrowed strength from the ground, and then he forcibly stopped his body. Fortunately, he reacted quickly, otherwise, he would be lying on the ground like a dog chewing shit. The next moment, the boy turned around immediately, looked at Li Yi in front of him, and said in a low voice, "I didn't expect you to be a master." His eyes are very gloomy, like a poisonous snake, which makes people shudder. Li Yi shrugged and said, "Are you okay? If you're okay, I'll send you a message. A good dog will not stand in the way." Hearing this, the young man raised his brows suddenly, and a wave of anger poured out of his face. After 15 or 16 years of his life, no one dared to say, "A good dog does not stand in the way," to him. "You really are an arrogant person." The boy looked at Li Yi and said deeply. Li Yi was speechless and asked, "What the hell is wrong with you? You attacked me suddenly and said I was arrogant. Let me tell you, if I'm really arrogant, I'll kill you now." Li Yi's murderous aura made the boy frown. However, the young man was not afraid of Li Yi at the bottom of his heart, so he said, "I don't think you know me yet. My name is Lexu, the boyfriend of the girl next to you." However, before the word, "friend," was uttered, Li Yi interrupted, "I know, your name is Lexu, your sister's name is Kaharu Utatane, and she is a high-level executive in Konoha village." Li Yi told Uchiha Makoto's investigation information, 9 times out of 10, all the information. Turning to bed, when Lingji heard the words, he couldn't help being a little shocked and asked, "You know me so well. Could it be that you admired me very much before, so you investigated me?" Hearing this, Li Yi smiled. Smile very disdainful. "What are you laughing at?" Turning to bed, Lexus frowned and asked. Li Yi didn't intend to conflict with Lingji now, and said, "I don't care what you want to do, but now, the good dog is out of the way." After that, Li Yi pulled a yame, intending to pass by Lexus. However, when he turned to bed, Lingji stretched out his arms and stood in front of the two of them. He deliberately lowered his voice and said, "Today, if you don't give me an explanation, then you will never want to leave." Li Yi frowned and asked, "Are you fucking sick? What am I going to tell you?" Turning to bed, Lexus said, "Ayame is my girlfriend, but now, she is sticking with you. What is your relationship with her? For the safety of my girlfriend, I need to know your identity." Hearing Lexus' words, Li Yi turned Byakugan madly. He has seen Shameless, but he has never seen such Shameless. Also Ayame is your girlfriend. Can you fucking get a face? Chapter 136 He is not my boyfriend. Therefore, after hearing what Lexus said about going to bed, Li Yi smiled directly. The smile is very disdainful. Turning to bed, Lingji frowned and asked, "What are you laughing at?" "I laugh at you for bragging and not drafting," Li Yi said with a smile. "Bragging, what does it mean?" Turning to bed, Lexus blinked, not understanding the meaning of the 3 words, bragging. Hearing this, Li Yi squinted his eyes. It seems that the words in this world are somewhat different from the words on the earth. Afterwards, Li Yi explained with a smile, "To brag means to talk big." Huh. Turning to bed, a look of displeasure appeared between Lingji's brows. He stared at Li Yi with his gloomy eyes and asked in a low voice, "Brother, what do you mean? Don't call me brother." Li Yi waved his hand. "I don't have a younger brother like you." "Brother, I'm not happy when you say this." Turning to bed, Lingji said, with a hint of threat in his tone. "You're not happy. If you're not happy, can't you still kill me?" Li Yi smiled and spread his hands. Li Yi's question left Lingji not knowing how to answer it. If you are talking about playing word games, then 10 Lexus will not be able to play 1 Li Yi. Just so confident. Finally, turning to bed, Lingji stared at Li Yi and said, "Brother, if you insist on making it difficult for me, then I can assure you that in the future, your life here will not be easy." His tone was gloomy, and his thumb still pointed to the ground under his feet. The smell of threat was self-evident. However, hearing this, Li Yi pretended to be stupid, pointed to the ground under the feet of Lexus, and asked, "The days I was there." "What do you mean? My days are at my house, not there, brother. I'm afraid there's something wrong with your brain. Li Yi's tone changed from doubt to ridicule, to quite natural. Even Ayame thought that Li Yi really didn't understand what Lexus said when he turned to bed, and suddenly laughed out with a poof, and then hurriedly covered his mouth. Turning to bed, Ling Ji felt that there must be something wrong with the man in black in front of him. If not, how could he not understand his words? You have already said it so clearly, you are a normal person, you can understand it, okay. Lexus was both speechless and angry when he turned to bed. Li Yi's ridicule had a serious blow to his self-esteem. He had lived in Konoha village for 15 or 16 years. When was he ever mocked like this? Therefore, he didn't plan to talk nonsense with Li Yi, but straight to the point and said, "Brother, I repeat, Ayame is my girlfriend, and as her boyfriend, I now ask you to stay away from her immediately. If you dare to say no word, I can't spare you." Before, his threat was only afterwards, but now, his threat has moved to the bright side. This is a naked threat. Hearing this, Li Yi smiled again, turned to look at Ayame, and asked, "Ayame, let me ask you, is he your boyfriend?" Ayame was stunned for a moment, then, she was scared. She wanted to say, no, but she was afraid that she would bring trouble to herself and even more trouble to Li Yi. However, Li Yi's firm eyes gave her an inexplicable sense of security. Turned to bed, Lexus also kept staring at Ayame, with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. He had threatened Ayame before that if Ayame didn't confess their relationship in front of outsiders, then he would find someone to smash her dad's shop. Although Lexus was young, his mind was very thorough. He knew that Ayame cared about his father's ramen restaurant very much, so he threatened Ayame with it. His thoughts were all learned from his sister. However, in the end, under the gaze of Lexus, Ayame shook his head and said, "He's not my boyfriend, I don't know him well." Ayame's voice was not loud, it was like a bolt from the blue, slamming on top of Lexus' head. Lexus' body trembled when he turned to sleep, and he almost didn't stand still. He was full of confidence before, because he felt that he had caught Ayame's weakness. Even if he went too far, Ayame had to act according to his ideas. But I didn't expect that Ayame had his own ideas. This surprised Lexus. However, while being surprised, Lexus also knew that the reason why Ayame dared to say this must be because of Lin Chen. This man, I'm afraid he is a tough stubble. Turning to bed, Ling Ji stared at Li Yi, his eyes narrowed slightly. At this time, Li Yi turned around, looked at Lexus, and said with a smile, "Ayame said, she is not your girlfriend, she doesn't like you. So, you should go back and forth from there, don't bother anymore. Her. Hee. Turning to bed, Ling Ji smiled, with a very cold smile, and asked, "Brother, what's your name?" "Li Yi." Li Yi said. "Li Yi, I remember." Turning to bed, Lexus nodded, and then asked again, "Brother, are you Jonin or Chunin?" Li Yi shook his head, "I'm not a ninja." Turning to bed, Ling Ji was slightly taken aback. He wanted to attack Li Yi before, but Li Yi almost threw him out by leveraging his strength. This made him think that Li Yi must be a master, either Chunin or Jonin. However, Li Yi is now saying that he is not even a ninja. What is he? Warrior, spy. Li Yi wants to pretend to say something. Lao Su is just an ordinary person, that's all. However, saying this will bring huge self-confidence to Lexus, which will bring unnecessary trouble to himself, so Li Yi didn't say much. "Li Yi, I remember your name." Lexus stared at Li Yi and said, "Also, there is nothing I can't do that I believe in Lexus. Ayame will become my girlfriend sooner or later, and even the gods can't change this." Li Yi nodded, "You are really good at bragging about not writing drafts." Turning to bed, Lexus frowned. He really wants to take action now and teach Li Yi a lesson. Although he is only 15 or 16 years old, his strength has reached the level of Chunin. However, because he is Kaharu Yudatane's younger brother, before he does anything, he will investigate the other party's details, and he will never act rashly. Now, he is ready to investigate this Li Yi in depth first, and then make plans. In his eyes, Li Yi's strength is at least Chunin, otherwise it is impossible to catch his own punch. In fact, if Li Yi lied that he was Chunin or Jonin, then Lexus might attack him. However, Li Yi didn't say anything, but it made Lingji feel suspicious and fearful in his heart, so he didn't dare to act rashly. As an old saying goes, the smarter the person, the more unhappy they are. Chapter 137-9 Dragon's Hegemony Technique. Although Lexus didn't plan to teach Li Yi a lesson, he didn't want Li Yi to leave with Ayame just like that, so he said, "Brother, let me advise you again, keep Ayame behind." "Why keep her?" Li Yi shrugged. "I'm going to take her home now, a good dog is out of the way." "You can take her home, and I can take her home." Turning to bed, Lingji said, "Next, let me take her home. After all, I am her boyfriend and I have an obligation to protect her safety." Li Yi put on a speechless expression and said, "Are you finished yet? Ayame said you're not his boyfriend, what are you still entangled in here? I'm not talking nonsense with you anymore, let's go." After that, Li Yi pulled Ayame and walked forward. However, when he turned to bed, Lexus stood in front of Li Yi again, stared at Li Yi, and said in a low voice, "Brother, are you sure you want to go against me? I can warn you, those who go against me will be disabled now. Is dead." Hearing this, Li Yi made an, "Oh," and nodded. After he finished speaking, he pulled Ayame again and brushed past Lexus. This time, Lexus didn't stop him from going to bed. However, his face turned gloomy like a dark cloud. "Li Yi, you wait for me." Although his voice was not loud, it was extremely low, and there was a strong killing intent in his tone, which made people shudder. Ayame shivered. Li Yi was safe and sound. Instead he patted Ayame's little hand and said with a smile, "There is an old saying that a stinky fart doesn't make a sound, a loud fart doesn't stink, and the louder the fart, the less stinky it is." Ayame didn't understand Li Yi's words for a while. However, Ayame is very smart. The next moment, she understood the meaning of Li Yi's words, and suddenly burst out laughing. However, Lexus was not as smart as Ayame, and he didn't understand the meaning of these words until Li Yi took Ayame away. Immediately, when he turned to bed, Lingji stomped his feet in anger. "Damn bastard." When he turned to bed, Lingji's face was grim, the blue veins burst out on his forehead, and his hands were clenched tightly, obviously extremely angry. "Smelly farts don't make noise, and farts don't stink. The real lethal fart is the stinky fart, but the stinky fart doesn't make a sound. On the contrary, the louder the fart, it does not stink, and naturally has no lethality." That's right, Li Yi just called Lexus a sound fart. Turning to bed, Lexus roared in his heart, "Then let's see, am I a fart or a stinky fart? I'm not a fart when I turn to bed, Lexus." Suddenly, something seemed wrong with what he said, and when he turned to bed, Lingji hurriedly corrected it in his heart. "No, I'm not a fart, I'm a human. A living person." At the same time, Ayame's doorstep. Li Yi said, "Go back. Brother Li Yi, pay attention to safety on the road." Ayame reminded concernedly. "Okay, don't worry." Li Yi nodded and smiled. Ayame just turned around and walked into the house. Watching Ayame enter the house, Li Yi returned the same way. He crossed his hands on the back of his head, walked slowly on the road, looked up at the stars in the sky, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he was thinking about something. Suddenly, ding! A crisp sound suddenly sounded in Li Yi's mind without warning. Li Yi's eyes lit up, and without any hesitation, he immediately opened the system panel. At the same time, the crisp voice of the system sounded in Li Yi's mind. "Congratulations to the host for completing the mission of killing enemy ninjas and getting a chance to evolve. It's still just an evolutionary opportunity, which makes Li Yi a little disappointed." However, Li Yi was not too disappointed. After all, this was the case before, and he did not expect much change this time. However, just as Li Yi wanted to close the system panel, the crisp sound of the system actually sounded again. Ding! Congratulations to the host for getting the extra reward, the Peerless Body Training Method, Kowloon Hegemony Body Art. Almost at the same time as the voice fell, Li Yi felt a flood that rushed into his mind. The flood was so huge that it seemed to burst his head. Ah! Li Yi screamed in pain, covered his head and knelt on the ground halfway, his face contorted from the pain. After a full 7 or 8 minutes, the pain in my mind gradually disappeared. Li Yi stopped breathing cold air, and his face returned to normal. His whole body was covered in sweat, his face was pale, his limbs were weak, and his eyes were black, as if he would faint in the next moment. In fact, the fact is also true, at this moment Li Yi, everything in front of him is flowers and overlapping. He just felt that his brain was a mess, and he couldn't remember anything, his ears were ringing, and he couldn't hear anything around him. Now, let alone a genin, even an ordinary person can kill Li Yi. After all, the current Li Yi can neither see nor hear, isn't this just the fish on the board? However, the body's instincts still exist. Although his mind was in chaos, Li Yi's body was staggering towards the direction of home. If this goes on, Li Yi will be able to return home sooner or later. But at this moment, behind Li Yi, a black-robed figure suddenly appeared. He was not tall, wearing a black robe and a mask, and holding a sharp kunai in his hand, he quickly walked towards Li Yi. Because he walked on tiptoe, he hardly made a sound. In fact, even if he made a sound, Li Yi couldn't hear it. Li Yi walked to a remote street with no one around. Li Yi at this moment, and the sharp kunai in his hand was only a stone's throw away from Li Yi's back. Seeing that there was no one around, the man in black robe immediately raised kuei and stabbed towards Li Yi's back. However, just in the moment. Roar! A very strange and domineering roar suddenly sounded from Li Yi's body. That's right, the source of the sound is not Li Yi's throat and mouth, but Li Yi's body. Almost at the same time, a golden light flashed on Li Yi's back, and a looming golden creature rushed out. Crack! That sharp kunai snapped in half in an instant. And the 5 fingers of the black-robed man holding kunai were also broken in an instant, and the bones were shattered. Ah! The man in black robe screamed in pain, and his body flew towards the back involuntarily. His feet painted 2 grooves on the ground, and finally stopped 7 or 8 meters away. The golden creature, which looked like a snake but had 2 horns and 4 claws, rushed out of Li Yi's body, circled around Li Yi first, then returned to Li Yi's body and disappeared. The man in black robe saw this scene, his face changed greatly, and his gaze towards Li Yi was full of caution. However, the expected counterattack did not happen. Li Yi seemed to know nothing, still staggered and walked towards the direction of home in a daze. Chapter 138_Excessive Use of the Brain. Looking at the back of Li Yi leaving, the man in black robe stood there without chasing after him. Because he didn't dare to chase. First, all of his 5 fingers are now broken, and the severe pain will greatly affect his combat effectiveness. Second, he is very scared of Li Yi now. If the golden creature just now attacked not his kunai, but his body, then he would be dead now. The huge impact made him terrified. Damn, what the hell is this guy? Black robe stared at Li Yi, those eyes were like snake pupils, making people shudder. No, I must ask my sister to investigate this man, this guy is by no means easy. The next moment, without the slightest hesitation, the man in black robe immediately ran in the opposite direction. Li Yi's brain was confused, his physical instincts still existed, so he returned to the door before he knew it. Bang! Li Yi slammed his right fist on the door, and the next moment, his body fell to the ground like a puddle of mud. Uchiha Makoto in the room heard the sound and immediately opened the door to check. But I saw Li Yi lying on the ground, short of breath, pale and sweaty. Uchiha Makoto's pupils shrank, and he hurriedly asked, Li Yi, Who did you fight? However, Li Yi didn't seem to hear his words and didn't reply. Uchiha Makoto also had no ink marks, helped Li Yi, and went back to the house. She helped Li Yi to the sofa. Li Yi was still confused at the moment, his eyes were blank, as if he had lost his soul. Uchiha Makoto took off Li Yi's clothes with a cruel heart. Result, Li Yi became a naked man with his whole body exposed in front of Uchiha Makoto. However, to Uchiha Makoto's surprise, there were no wounds on Li Yi's body at all. It's not an external injury. Could it be an internal injury? Looking at the confused Li Yi, Uchiha Makoto stood up without any hesitation and said, Li Yi, wait, I'll go to the medical ninja. After finishing speaking, she first covered Li Yi with a quilt, and then pushed the door out. Uchiha Makoto was fast, and after 5 or 6 minutes, she had brought a female medical ninja into the room. Makoto-san, do you live here now? After the woman in white walked into the house, she first sniffed her nose, and then asked with a look of surprise. Your nose is still so smart. Uchiha Makoto smiled and gently scratched the woman's nose. A woman's sense of smell is very sensitive. She can smell it. Every corner of this house is full of the smell of Uchiha Makoto. This is not something that can be done in a short time. Why, she said, Uchiha Makoto lives here. Uchiha Makoto had already pulled the woman, walked to the sleeping Li Yi, and said, my friend is injured, look quickly. Woman lowered her head and looked at Li Yi's handsome face with sharp edges and corners, and suddenly frowned, I seem to have seen this man somewhere before. Oh, our Konoha village is so big, maybe you two have met before. Well, let's stop talking, let's see what happened to him. Uchiha Makoto urged. Woman smiled teasingly. Makoto, you seem to be very concerned about this man. There was a strange smell in her tone. However, she didn't have any ink, and while she was speaking, she squatted down, lifted the quilt, and put her hands on Li Yi's chest. Immediately, a green light flickered on the woman's hands, and a soft force poured into Li Yi's body along the woman's hands. She began to examine every part of Li Yi's body, the brain, eyes, nose, mouth, neck, internal organs, 6 internal organs. Uchiha Makoto waited, looking anxious. After 2 or 3 minutes, the woman was finished. She opened her eyes, and the green light on her hands gradually disappeared. Uchiha Makoto asked, what the hell happened to him? First he let out a breath of white breath slowly, and then the woman turned over a Byakugan and said, he's just overexerting his brain and he's tired. After a night's rest, he will almost be fine. Excessive use of the brain. Uchiha Makoto raised his brows, obviously puzzled. That's impossible. How could he be a little too much? I don't know about it. Anyway, according to my examination, he is overusing his brain, that's all. Woman shook her head and said, suddenly stretched out her right hand, touched Li Yi's abdominal muscles, and smiled. But then again, this man is really handsome, and his body is also very healthy. His internal organs are full of vitality. The most important thing is, he's still in good shape. While speaking, the woman involuntarily lifted Li Yi's quilt. Result, Li Yi's lower abdomen, belly button, and hair were exposed one by one. The eyes of the woman in white gleamed, and there was even a hint of saliva from the corner of her mouth. However, just when the most private place was about to be revealed, Uchiha Makoto suddenly rushed in front of Li Yi and pulled the quilt back on. Woman gave Uchiha Makoto a deep look. Said, he's really just overthinking. You're not lying to me, are you? Sister Makoto, why should I lie to you? Woman turned over a Byakugan and said, I ask you, was he unconscious and confused when he wasn't asleep? Well, that's right. Uchiha Makoto nodded in recollection. This is a sign of overuse. Woman said leisurely, maybe it was a long time of study, 3 days and 3 nights without sleep. Maybe it was because he studied too much in one moment, which led to overuse of his brain. In short, he was overuse of his brain, and he could take a night's rest. Recovery. Uchiha Makoto let out a long sigh of relief. He also thought that Lee Yi was attacked and made a fool. It turned out to be just overusing the brain. However, Uchiha Makoto was very puzzled. What did Lee Yi do before? Why did he use his brain too much? He should be overdrawn physically. How could he overuse his brain? Makoto-san, what's his name? At this time, the woman touched Lee Yi's angular face and asked. Uchiha Makoto came back to his senses and said, his name is Lee Yi. Lee Yi, a very familiar name. While touching Lee Yi's face, the woman recalled and said, I always feel like I've heard this name somewhere. Where is it? Where is it? Suddenly, the woman's expression changed, as if she was thinking of something. Her eyes widened, her body jumped up like a frightened bird. That's right, she jumped right up. Oh my god, I remembered. It was him. He was Lee Yi. The woman stood on the ground and pointed at Lee Yi on the sofa. Because of her panic, she even stuttered when she spoke. Tianxia is a doctor in the Department of Respiratory Medicine. Presumably all readers also know the recent situation. The world works overtime every day, so the update is slow. I hope you will bear with me. Chapter 139-Deadwood. He's Lee Yi. The woman in white stood on the ground, pointed at Lee Yi on the sofa, and said in horror. Uchiha Makoto frowned slightly and asked, You know him? Why don't I know him? Woman nodded fiercely. He's the man the adults like. That lord. Which lord? Uchiha Makoto asked curiously. You don't know. Woman in white gave Uchiha Makoto a suspicious look. Uchiha Makoto shook his head. Lee Yi and I have only known each other for a few days, so of course I don't know his past. Who is the adult you mentioned? Is that Lee Yi's ex-girlfriend? Ex-girlfriend. The woman in white gave Uchiha Makoto a deep look, and suddenly asked, Makoto, do you really like this kid? Uchiha Makoto didn't answer. Woman in white beckoned to Uchiha Makoto and said, Makoto, come over here, I'll tell you. Uchiha Makoto did so. Woman first looked around to make sure there was no one else around, and then she attached to Uchiha Makoto's ear and whispered a word. Uchiha Makoto's beautiful eyes shrank slightly. Sister Makoto, you must not like him, or you will definitely be revenged by that adult. Woman's face was serious and she said, Besides, that adult has a very bad temper, and the weather is uncertain. Uchiha Makoto didn't answer, but narrowed his beautiful eyes slightly. The light in his eyes flickered, and he didn't know what he was thinking about. Sister Makoto, really, listen to my advice. You'd better stay away from this kid while that lord is still parading outside the village, or you won't have any good fruit to eat when that lord comes back. The woman said seriously. Uchiha Makoto just waved his hand and said, Okay sister, I know, it's getting late, you go back quickly, I won't send you. Sister Makoto, you must listen to me and stay away from this kid as soon as possible. Before the woman leaves, remind again. Uchiha Makoto nodded. Woman leaves. There were only 2 people left in the room. Uchiha Makoto sat next to Lee Yi, looking at Lee Yi's angular face. For some reason, her heart was a little mixed. Suddenly, Uchiha Makoto's eyes lit up, and he seemed to have thought of something, thinking in his heart, although that adult likes him, I have never heard that adult's name from his mouth. Does he not like that adult? Impossible. That adult is so beautiful, but he is one of Sanin, and his strength is incomparably strong. A normal man would like such a woman, right? Looking at Lee Yi's face, Uchiha Makoto thought a lot for a while. Forget it, I'll ask him in detail tomorrow. Uchiha Makoto thought so. After that, Uchiha Makoto gave Lee Yi a bath and massage. After working for a while, Uchiha Makoto put Lee Yi back on the sofa again. Uchiha Makoto was sweating from exhaustion and went to take a shower. After washing, Uchiha Makoto did not go straight to sleep, but started to make a training plan for tomorrow. Today, she spent an afternoon testing Lee Yi's strength, speed, endurance and other indicators. With these indicator values, Uchiha Makoto can develop new plans. Time flies. Before you know it, it's late at night. Uchiha Makoto yawned. Looking at the paper full of words in front of her, she stretched out, and a satisfied look appeared on that beautiful face. After that, he rubbed his eyes, lay on the bed, turned off the light, and fell asleep. Nighttime always goes by so fast. The morning light of the next day, through the window, hit Uchiha Makoto's face. Clap clap clap. Uchiha Makoto was patted awake. She opened her eyes, and the first thing that caught her eye was Lii's handsome and angular face. Uchiha Makoto was startled, hurriedly grabbed the quilt to cover his mouth, and asked angrily, "What do you want to do? Why are you in my room?" Lii said, "It's getting late." Uchiha Makoto glanced at the sky, his beautiful eyes shrank suddenly, and he was surprised. "I slept for so long." Lii sat beside the bed and asked, "You brought me back last night." "What do you mean?" Uchiha Makoto froze for a moment and asked, "What did I bring you back?" "You brought it back yourself." "I came back myself. It's impossible." Lii scratched his head. Uchiha Makoto asked, "I also want to ask you, what the hell happened last night? Why did you overuse your brain?" Lii didn't seem to hear Uchiha Makoto's words and just murmured, "Who brought me back? Don't you have any memory of last night?" Uchiha Makoto asked again. Lii nodded. Last night, with the sound of the system sound, Lii lost consciousness and completely lost his memory, as if he had been drinking. "When I found you, you were already lying in the doorway." Uchiha Makoto said, "As for what happened before, I don't know, maybe someone brought you back, or maybe you came back by yourself." "Is that so?" Lii nodded, thinking to himself, "It seems that the system really didn't lie to me." Before, when he woke up, he asked the system, "What happened last night?" The system said, "After you accepted the cultivation method of 9 Dragons dominant body art, you lost consciousness due to overuse of your brain, but your body instincts were still there, so you walked back in a daze." However, Lii didn't quite believe it. He is not an old horse, how can he know the way? But now it seems that the system did not lie. "Put on your clothes, I'll go out first." Lii got up and left. It wasn't until Lii closed the door that Uchiha Makoto came back to his senses. Little pain in his cheeks, which made Uchiha Makoto curse Lin Chen in his heart. "This guy is so merciless when he patted me so hard. HMPH, I don't feel pity for Shangshiyu at all, it's really a piece of dead wood." Meanwhile, in the living room, Lii sat on the sofa and opened the system panel. Host name, Lii. Age, 20 years old. Sex, male. Strength, extraordinary first order. Weapon, Dinghai Shinpin. Cultivation technique, peerless body refinement cultivation technique, Kowloon hegemony technique. Mission, kill Uchiha Fugaku, capture Uchiha Makoto's heart, change Konan's attitude towards himself. Remaining chance to evolve, twice. The first is the line of strength, which has changed from a mortal to an extraordinary first order. Other words, Lii's current strength level in all aspects has reached the genin level. The second thing that has changed is the practice of practice. The peerless body training method, Kowloon hegemony body art. Chapter 140 Hyuga Vine Eagle is dead. Kulong Batiwe, on the system panel, Lii narrowed his eyes slightly. Afterwards, Lii asked in his heart, "System, how can I activate the 9 Dragons domination technique?" The crisp voice of the system immediately resounded in Lii's mind. "Go back to the host, you can activate the 9 Dragons domination technique with just a thought." "Oh, a thought, just thinking about it?" Lii asked. System replied, "Go back to the host, that's right." Lii immediately closed his eyes and began to think. Almost at the same time, golden light burst out from the surface of his body. Immediately afterwards, a strange and domineering roar sounded from his body. Boom! An invisible sense of oppression swept out from Lii's body. Like a wave, and instantly filled Li Yi's entire room. Just then, crunch! Uchiha Makoto's door was suddenly opened and she came out. Seeing the light on the surface of Li Yi's body, Uchiha Makoto frowned, thinking he was dazzled, and immediately rubbed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, he saw that the light on the surface of Li Yi's body had disappeared. Huh, am I really blinded? Uchiha Makoto was suspicious. However, logically speaking, as a member of the Uchiha clan, she has excellent eyesight and is not dazzled. Li Yi, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? Uchiha Makoto walked towards Li Yi and asked. Li Yi stood up from the sofa and shook his head. It's okay, what's wrong? Nothing. Uchiha Makoto shook his head. Where are we going to eat? Li Yi stretched and asked with a smile. Let's go out to eat. Uchiha Makoto said. I woke up late today and didn't cook. Well, good. Li Yi nodded, then said, after dinner, I'll go to the Hokage office. Uchiha Makoto head taps. Li Yi captured Hyuga Fujihawk, the missing nin, and should receive the corresponding reward. The two went out together. Li Yi walked ahead. Uchiha Makoto walked in the back. She wiped her eyes, and then there was a flash of blood in her right eye, and then she became Sharingan. She used this two-tomo Sharingan to look at Li Yi's back, with a scrutiny in her eyes, obviously observing. Li Yi only felt his back, as if he had been stabbed, and immediately frowned and turned to look. Saw Uchiha Makoto strolling behind him in a leisurely manner, and there was no one else. Li Yi frowned slightly. But he didn't think too much, but continued to move forward. Uchiha Makoto had already put away Sharingan. She pondered, his body is not different, it seems that I was indeed dazzled before. Uchiha Makoto followed Li Yi to the breakfast stall. After breakfast, Li Yi hiccuped, patted his belly and said, I'm going to Hokage's office, do you want to come with me? Uchiha Makoto nodded. Let's go together. I also have something to report to Lord Hokage. Okay, let's go together. The two came to the door of Hokage's office together. Boom. Nara Shikaku's slightly immature voice came from the room. Who is it? I, Li Yi. Li Yi replied. Crunch. Immediately, the door was opened, and Nara Shikaku's head stuck out. He glanced at Li Yi, then at Uchiha Makoto, and said, come in. The two walked in together. Hokage's office is very messy, with all kinds of documents lying around. Back to Li Yi, Sarutobi Hiruzen stood in front of the window with his hands on his back, overlooking the heaven and earth outside the window. At this time, he was still smoking a cigarette, surrounded by clouds and mist. He turned his back to Li Yi and said, you're here. Li Yi nodded. That thing, but you did it. Sarutobi Hiruzen asked, in a low voice. What's the matter? Li Yi blinked. Are you pretending to be stupid? Sarutobi Hiruzen asked again. Lord Hokage, I don't know what you're talking about. Li Yi shook his head. Hearing the conversation between the two, Uchiha Makoto was full of doubts. What are these two talking about? Why can't I understand a word? Is there some unknown deal between them? At this time, in the fog, Sarutobi Hiruzen turned around, looked at Li Yi and said, Hyuga Vine Eagle is dead, do you know? Li Yi blinked, then shook his head, I don't know. Uchiha Makoto's pupils shrank suddenly. What? Hyuga Fujihawk is actually dead. How is this possible? Hee, I don't know how to be so calm. Nara Shikaku on the side looked at Li Yi with a smile and asked. Birth, old age, sickness and death are common occurrences, let alone him. Even if it were me, I wouldn't be sure if I would die tomorrow. Li Yi shrugged and said, then asked, how did he die? Sarutobi Hiruzen replied, died from food poisoning. Food poisoning. Li Yi blinked. What did he eat? He ate something at your house, came back to Hyuga's house, ate something again, and died. Sarutobi Hiruzen took a hard puff and said, "Now, the Hyuga family suspects that you did it. They doubted me, and I doubted them. Lee Yi flipped through a Byakugan, dumping a shit pot over my head. I didn't do anything, I just gave him a bowl of mushroom soup. The problem is this bowl of mushroom soup." Sarutobi Hiruzen said, "If you don't give him anything, then you have no suspicion, but you gave him a bowl of mushroom soup. I drank mushroom soup too, and she drank mushroom soup too, why are we both okay?" Lee Yi pointed to Uchiha Makoto and said, "Who knows if there is any poison in the mushroom soup you gave Hyuga Fujihawk?" Nara Shikaku asked immediately. Lee Yi could answer. Sarutobi Hiruzen said, "Lee Yi, if you really did this thing, admit it generously. I will protect you. No matter what the Hyuga family does to you, I will protect you." "I really didn't do it." Lee resolutely shook his head. "I, Lee Yi, are worthy of the sky and worthy of the earth. I have never done this kind of stealing. Besides, if I want to kill Hyuga Vine Eagle, do I still need to use poison? When I was in the suburbs, I can stomp him into meat-chan. Do I need to use such a dirty trick?" Sarutobi Hiruzen stared at Lee stubbornly. Lee Yi looked at him, his eyes firm, neither humble nor arrogant. The two eyes collided in the air, as if a spark collided. The end. Sarutobi Hiruzen lowered his eyes first and said, "It really doesn't seem like you did it. Lord Hokage, if you don't believe me, you can use demonic illusion to extort a confession from me." Lee Yi added, "It's not necessary." Sarutobi Hiruzen waved his hand. "I believe in you. On the Hyuga family's side, I will handle it for you."